Welcome, seekers of shadows and explorers of the unknown. Tonight, we journey into a side of Nevada rarely spoken of: the silent, abandoned, and haunted hospitals where patient spirits linger long after the last light flickered and the doors were locked. Nevada, the Silver State, is known for its desert landscapes, glittering neon lights, and booming mining towns, but underneath the surface lies a chilling history of suffering, neglect, and unresolved tragedy. Hospitals, places built to heal, often became final resting grounds for those who could not be saved. Tonight, we'll step inside 25 of Nevada's most haunted hospitals. From sprawling psychiatric institutions to deserted and abandoned wards where whispers of the past echo through empty hallways. So take a deep breath, turn off the world outside, and step into the shadows with me, where the patients still roam. Nevada State Hospital in Reno, originally established in 1881 as the Nevada Insane Asylum, stands as a stark reminder of the darker chapters in mental health history. Its sprawling campus, with high stone walls and iron gates, stretches across acres of land, giving it a foreboding presence even from a distance. Over decades, thousands of mentally ill patients were admitted to its wards, many of them never to leave again. The records are sparse, and much of the past remains obscured by time, but the stories that linger are vivid and chilling, whispered by locals and documented by visitors who dared to explore its abandoned halls. The hospital was built in an era when mental illness was poorly understood, and treatment methods were often brutal by today's standards. Patients lived in large communal wards under strict supervision, and those who died were interred in a modest cemetery behind the main buildings. For many years, the cemetery served as a solemn resting place, a quiet and dignified final home for those whose lives had been marked by suffering and isolation. Yet, with the passage of time and the expansion of Reno, portions of the cemetery were desecrated or built over, leaving countless spirits restless, wandering the grounds without the peace of a proper resting place. Visitors who step onto the grounds report a pervasive sense of unease that begins long before the hospital's decaying buildings come into view. Cold drafts sweep across the lawns, sometimes chilling even on warm days, and the wind seems to carry faint whispers that vanish when one tries to listen closely. Some swear they have glimpsed shadowy figures flitting across empty courtyards, vanishing when approached, or caught in peripheral vision, only to be gone when looked at directly. The air itself seems heavier here, laden with memories of despair, confinement, and unspoken suffering. Inside the hospital, the stories grow more unsettling. Corridors stretch endlessly, lined with peeling paint and rusted iron railings. The sound of footsteps echoing in empty halls is a common experience, as though unseen residents continue their nightly rounds. Visitors have reported whispers calling names, voices low and urgent, sometimes pleading, sometimes accusatory, filling wards where the living no longer tread. Doors creak open by themselves, lights flicker, and in some rooms, objects are found moved or disturbed without explanation. The combination of decay, silence, and historical trauma seems to have created a space where the past refuses to rest. Among the most frequently reported apparitions are those of nurses and staff, gliding silently through hallways in period uniforms. Their presence is often described as melancholy rather than threatening, as if they are still tending to patients who have long since passed. Some witnesses claim that these figures follow them through corridors, only to dissolve into mist or disappear behind walls. Others have seen figures standing at the foot of empty beds, gazing out with hollow eyes that reflect centuries of sorrow. The echoes of their movements, the faint brush of air against the skin, and the sense of being observed leave a lasting impression on those who encounter them. Patients themselves, or the memories of them, are said to linger throughout the hospital. Some visitors report cold spots that move with a deliberate pattern, as though someone or something is pacing, and the occasional sighting of hunched or shuffling forms in corners, disappearing when confronted. Footsteps of different sizes echo simultaneously, suggesting multiple presences in otherwise empty rooms. Whispers are often indistinct, but carry a weight that feels personal, as if the spirits remember the names and stories of those who once walked the halls alongside them. The surrounding cemetery, though partially disturbed, continues to draw the curious and the brave. Gravestones are cracked, broken, or buried under years of overgrowth, yet the atmosphere remains charged. Some have reported seeing figures sitting quietly among the graves, nurses attending unseen patients, or solitary men and women staring into the ground as if trapped in a moment of perpetual mourning. Cold drafts seem to circle particular areas, and shadows sometimes appear to move independently of the natural light, leaving a lingering sense that the dead are aware of the living intruding on their territory. Paranormal investigators have spent hours in the hospital, documenting inexplicable phenomena, sudden drops in temperature, the sensation of invisible hands brushing past, and recordings capturing faint, mournful voices that appear to speak names or pleas for help. Photographs reveal anomalies, blurred shapes, or glowing orbs when nothing is visibly present. Those who have spent extended periods on the grounds often speak of a profound emotional weight, a deep sadness that is difficult to shake even after leaving. Despite its abandoned state, Nevada State Hospital has become a focal point for those fascinated by the paranormal. Tourists, urban explorers, and paranormal enthusiasts arrive. Drawn by stories of lingering spirits and the echoes of a troubled past, they wander the corridors, linger in the wards, and sit among the graves, listening for the faintest whisper or the flicker of movement at the edge of perception. Each encounter leaves a mark, a reminder that some places carry the memory of those who suffered there, refusing to be forgotten. Carson Valley Hospital, nestled in the quiet town of Gardnerville, Nevada, has long been a place of whispered stories and restless memories. Built in 1914, the hospital served the rural community for just a decade, offering care to residents with limited medical resources. Despite its short operational life, the hospital left a lasting mark on the town's history. Families remember it as a place of hope, where people came seeking relief from illness, but also as a place that could not hold the suffering of life and death at bay. When the hospital closed in 1924, it was abandoned almost immediately, left to decay quietly on the outskirts of the town. Yet, those who dare to explore its remains today say the building has not forgotten its past, and the spirits of patients and staff linger among the crumbling walls. The first impressions of Carson Valley Hospital are striking. The structure, though weathered by nearly a century, still carries the faint echo of its purpose. Windows, broken or fogged over, hint at the rooms within, and peeling paint and warped floors add to an atmosphere of desolation. The silence is heavy, broken only by the wind weaving through empty corridors or the occasional scurry of small animals inhabiting the space. But as ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts have reported, the silence is often deceptive. Flickering lights are a common occurrence, appearing in wards where no electricity exists, sometimes illuminating long, narrow hallways or empty patient rooms in ghostly bursts. Witnesses describe these lights as sporadic, as though unseen hands are testing the darkness, revealing shadows that vanish the moment one looks directly at them. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena, often seen moving along the halls of the former wards. These indistinct forms give the impression of purpose. Some resemble nurses or doctors in early 20th century attire, while others appear as patients, hunched or pacing slowly, their faces blurred and their movements eerily deliberate. Observers often feel watched as they navigate the hallways, the sensation of being followed a common experience. Doors may creak open or close without cause, and floors sometimes echo with footsteps that cannot be accounted for. Visitors have reported instances where they swear someone brushed past them in a corridor, only to find the space empty when they turned around. The hospital's abandoned pediatric wards are said to be particularly active. Local legend tells of children who once filled these rooms, their laughter and cries a constant presence. Modern visitors sometimes hear the faint giggle of a child in the distance, or the sound of small feet running across the cracked linoleum. One paranormal investigator described standing in the pediatric ward late at night, hearing a series of playful, high-pitched giggles that circled around the room, only to vanish suddenly, as if the children had melted into the shadows. Some believe these sounds are echoes of the past, residual energy left behind by young patients who never fully left the world of the living. Others warn that the children's laughter is not always playful. It can sometimes shift to wails or sobs, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the suffering that occurred within these walls. The lingering scent of antiseptic is another commonly reported phenomenon, one that unnerves visitors. Despite the hospital being abandoned for nearly 100 years, some swear they can detect the faint, almost clinical smell of cleaning agents in empty wards, hallways, or operating rooms. The odor is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature or a sense of heaviness in the air. Witnesses describe it as an invisible presence pressing down, as if the hospital itself is holding on to the memories of the countless procedures performed within its walls. The pain and fear mingled with fleeting moments of relief and healing. Many ghost hunters report a strange duality in the atmosphere at Carson Valley Hospital. The building is at once melancholic and energetic, a place where sorrow lingers, but so does a faint echo of care. Apparitions of nurses are often described as somber, gliding silently from room to room, sometimes pausing as though attending to invisible patients. Some visitors have reported glimpses of doctors reviewing charts, their faces serious, their figures slowly fading into the darkness. These visions, coupled with the strange sounds and sensations, create the feeling that the hospital continues its work in some spectral form, tending to those who cannot leave, or perhaps replaying moments of its short but intense life. The exterior of the hospital is not immune to strange occurrences. Fog tends to gather unusually thick around the building on certain nights, enveloping the structure in a ghostly haze. Passers-by have reported seeing shapes moving behind broken windows or the faint glow of lanterns inside rooms that have long since lost all electricity. Sometimes, shadows appear to drift across the lawn, as if figures are pacing or gathering, their presence fleeting but unmistakable. Even during the day, visitors describe a sensation of being observed, a feeling that the hospital remembers them as it remembers the countless people who once passed through its doors. Despite its abandonment, Carson Valley Hospital continues to draw the curious, paranormal enthusiasts, urban explorers, and those drawn to dark history are frequent visitors. They come hoping to catch a glimpse of a shadow, to hear a whisper, or to capture evidence of the lingering spirits that make this place their home. Stories abound of people leaving the hospital shaken, yet strangely moved, feeling the weight of lives and memories suspended in time. The intersection of life and death, palpable in every corridor, room, and abandoned ward. The Desert Sanitarium, perched on the outskirts of Goldfield, Nevada, has long been a haunting landmark for the region. Built in the early 1900s to care for miners suffering from lung disease, injuries, and exhaustion from the harsh conditions of the surrounding desert, the facility was once a hub of activity, hope, and medical attention. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to tend to the workers who fueled the town's booming mining industry, providing care under challenging and often dangerous conditions. Yet, when the mines closed and the population dwindled, the hospital could no longer sustain itself. It was abandoned, left to the desert winds and the relentless sun. Its walls slowly crumbling, its hallways filled with dust and echoes of the past. But those who venture into the Desert Sanitarium today say that the spirits of its former patients and staff have never truly left. Visitors report a range of paranormal activity, beginning the moment they approach the building. On the horizon, the once white walls have faded to a weathered gray, and windows either shattered or clouded with dust hint at the empty corridors inside. At night, a faint glow of lantern light is sometimes seen flickering from behind the broken panes, drifting slowly down hallways that have long been uninhabited. It is as if the ghosts of nurses or orderlies are making their rounds, attending to patients who no longer exist. Those who attempt to follow the light often find it vanishing around corners, leaving only darkness and the faint scent of antiseptic lingering in the air. Footsteps on the dusty floors are among the most commonly reported phenomena. Guests recount the sensation of walking through a deserted wing, only to hear the unmistakable echo of someone pacing behind them. Sometimes the footsteps are heavy, deliberate, as if an injured miner is struggling across the floor, while other times they are lighter, almost hurried, like a nurse moving from room to room. Despite turning to confront the source, visitors consistently find the corridors empty, the silence returning as quickly as the sounds appeared. Some have claimed that the footsteps follow them from room to room, a spectral presence that refuses to be ignored. Shadowy figures are another frequent occurrence. People describe blurred forms in bandages, wandering the halls with slow, methodical movements. These apparitions are sometimes seen standing at the foot of a bed, observing the empty room, or moving through doorways as if continuing their daily rounds. Witnesses say the figures are translucent, their features indistinct, yet their presence is undeniable. On several occasions, visitors have reported fleeting glimpses of miners sitting on the edge of beds, rubbing their chests or coughing violently, only to disappear when approached. Some suggest these visions are the remnants of those who suffered most during the hospital's operation, souls unable to leave the place that once held their pain. The desert sanitarium is also known for its eerie, atmospheric phenomena. Sudden drops in temperature are common, even in the desert heat, chilling visitors as they navigate the building's interior. Cold drafts move unpredictably through hallways and rooms, often brushing against the skin or tugging at clothing. These breezes are accompanied by faint whispers, unintelligible but persistent, as if the hospital itself is murmuring to those who dare to listen. Some have reported hearing distant moans or the coughing of patients. Though the rooms are empty and silent to the casual observer, lights flicker without source, and old doors creak open on their own, suggesting movement where no living person is present. The hospital's abandoned patient wards hold some of the most intense experiences. Beds, long stripped of sheets, remain lined along cracked walls, and old medical equipment lies scattered, coated in decades of dust. Paranormal enthusiasts have captured photos where shadowy shapes appear beside beds, or orbs of light float unnaturally above the floor. Many of these orbs are described as moving with purpose, circling the rooms as if attending to the lingering spirits of patients who once depended on care. In some rooms, faint voices call out names or ask for help, echoing through the long corridors in a way that chills even the most skeptical visitor. The desert sanitarium's exterior is equally unsettling after dusk. The desert surrounding the building stretches endlessly, amplifying the isolation and the sense of vulnerability. Fog is rare in this region, yet on certain nights, a thin mist seems to curl around the hospital, reducing visibility and making the faint lantern glow appear even more otherworldly. Visitors walking the grounds sometimes report the sensation of being watched, or the fleeting impression of a figure darting across the open yard. Some swear they hear the distant ringing of a bell, though no bell exists, or the sound of a stretcher rolling over the cracked cement, moving as if guided by unseen hands. Despite the eerie reputation, the desert sanitarium continues to attract the curious. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and history enthusiasts visit in hopes of witnessing the strange activity firsthand. Many come armed with cameras and recording devices, hoping to capture evidence of the lingering spirits. Accounts often include stories of cameras malfunctioning, batteries draining unusually fast, or recordings capturing whispers and footsteps that cannot be explained. Those who spend the night frequently describe a sense of being observed, a feeling that the hospital remembers them as it remembers the countless miners and staff who once filled its rooms. The desert sanitarium is a monument to the human suffering and perseverance of a bygone era. Its lantern-lit hallways, echoing footsteps, shadowy figures in bandages, and sudden chills are not mere coincidences or tricks of the mind. They are the imprints of lives once lived in pain and hope. Visitors leave with a heightened awareness of the thin line between life and death, of a place where history refuses to settle quietly. Goldfield's remote hospital, long abandoned by the living, continues to hold the memories of the past, and its spirits walk its halls still, tending to a world that has forgotten them, yet cannot escape them. Silver Ridge Mental Institution sits perched on a remote ridge outside Ely, Nevada, an imposing structure of brick and stone that has withstood decades of desert winds and time. Built in the 1920s, it was designed to house the state's most troubled and incurable patients, those who could not be accommodated in smaller facilities. Over the years, the institution grew, with wings added to hold the increasing number of residents. At its peak, Silver Ridge was overcrowded, and the harsh desert winters made life inside even more grueling. Patients spent days confined to their rooms, with little warmth, few comforts, and a regimen of strict rules. The isolation, combined with the building's vast, echoing corridors, left a lasting impression on everyone who passed through its doors. Today, the institution is abandoned, its windows shattered, walls crumbling, and its stories whispered only by those daring enough to venture near. Visitors who approach Silver Ridge often speak of an immediate sense of unease, a weight that hangs in the dry air. The main building, with its towering facade, seems to watch as you draw near. Once inside, the silence is suffocating, broken only by the creaking of the old wooden floors and the occasional gust of wind rattling broken windows. Yet, those who linger report sounds that cannot be explained. Soft singing drifts through empty hallways, voices delicate yet mournful, echoing in the night. The melody is always the same, a lullaby, perhaps once used to calm restless patients. Visitors claim that the notes appear and vanish as if carried by invisible figures moving through the corridors. Rocking chairs in the common areas, long abandoned and coated in layers of dust, are said to move on their own. On many nights, witnesses report seeing a chair gently rocking back and forth, its rhythm slow and hypnotic, as though an unseen occupant remained seated, lost in thought or memory. Those brave enough to approach sometimes swear they feel a sudden chill brush past them, accompanied by the faint sound of a sigh or whisper. The wind cannot account for these movements. The desert air outside rarely penetrates the sealed rooms with such precision. Glances catch fleeting figures in period clothing along the halls. Shadows of men in simple suits or women in long dresses glide past corners, disappearing when approached. Some visitors report seeing patients pacing inside their former rooms, hands clasped nervously, or nurses carrying trays of medicine that vanish into thin air. The figures are translucent, their forms wavering as though struggling to remain anchored in the present. More than one person has said they felt the gaze of these apparitions, a silent acknowledgement of a world that no longer exists for them. The rooms themselves hold the strongest traces of the past. Patient chambers, once sparsely furnished with metal cots and simple wooden chairs, now lie in ruin, yet the energy inside remains palpable. Some claim to hear soft footsteps pacing in a square rhythm, the same rhythm heard in decades-old staff logs as patients walked endlessly in confinement. Others recount the sensation of cold hands brushing against their arms or shoulders, never lingering long enough to see the source. In certain areas, the scent of old medicine and antiseptic herbs, and something more indefinable clings to the air, drifting unexpectedly into visitors' noses. Many accounts describe an oppressive feeling in the winter months. The desert's cold, combined with the building's drafty halls, creates sudden chills, but witnesses insist these are different, heavier, as if the air itself carries sorrow. On particularly frigid nights, faint murmurs are reported through the empty hallways. Fragments of conversations, a patient calling for a friend, a nurse calling out instructions, all layered atop the whisper of the wind. Doors are said to slam unexpectedly, and windows rattle despite being sealed. Those who linger for long enough feel the weight of decades of isolation, pain, and longing pressing around them. The common rooms tell some of the most haunting stories. Visitors often note faint scratches on the floors, indentations where chairs once stood, and shadows that form near the fireplace, as though the warmth of the room is still sought. Occasionally, lights flash from the old bulbs in the ceiling, though the electricity has long been cut off. Some investigators have captured orbs of light hovering in rooms, moving in arcs reminiscent of former patients walking in circles to soothe themselves. The hallways carry the echoes of these orbs, as if the energy refuses to rest, replaying the steps of the institution's long-gone inhabitants. Even outside, Silver Ridge exudes a restless aura. The surrounding desert amplifies the isolation, and on clear nights, the building appears like a silhouette of memories cast against the stars. Observers walking the grounds often feel as though they are being followed by unseen presences. Some claim to see shadows flit behind broken windows or across the ridge itself, moving in patterns that suggest deliberate pacing, almost like a vigil kept by spirits unable to leave. In the wind, there are whispers, laughter, and sometimes a lullaby carried faintly across the desert night, reminding intruders that this place belongs not to the living but to the echoes of those who endured life within its walls. Highland General Hospital stands as a decaying monument to Las Vegas' past, a mid-century structure abandoned in the 1980s, yet full of stories that refuse to die. Once a bustling medical center, it treated patients from across the city, its bright corridors filled with the sounds of bustling nurses, doctors calling out instructions, and the laughter and cries of children in the pediatric wing. But as time passed, funding dwindled, the city grew around it, and the hospital was eventually shuttered. Today, the building sits in silence, its once bright tiles yellowed with age, windows broken, and the faint smell of antiseptic lingering in the stale air. Yet, despite its emptiness, Highland General is far from lifeless. Locals, urban explorers, and paranormal investigators alike report a presence that cannot be explained, lingering spirit, said to be a young girl who died tragically in the pediatric wing decades ago. Visitors entering the hospital for the first time often describe an immediate sense of unease. The air feels heavy and cold, and the faint echo of distant footsteps seems to follow every move. In the pediatric wing, where the girl's spirit is said to linger, the atmosphere is thick with the weight of memory. Abandoned toys scatter the hallways, some resting in dusty corners, others inexplicably shifted from their original positions. Visitors recount moments when toys roll slowly across the floor, seemingly guided by invisible hands. On more than one occasion, a small rocking horse has been seen moving back and forth on its own, the gentle creak of its movement resonating through the silent corridors. Some explorers say they have felt a sudden brush against their shoulders or arms, though no one else was present. Cold spots are a common phenomenon throughout the hospital. The temperature can drop sharply in certain rooms or hallways, leaving a chill that penetrates clothing and bones alike. These frigid patches often appear without warning, sometimes accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible giggle or whisper. Visitors report hearing the soft hum of a lullaby echoing faintly in empty rooms, as if the young girl is calling out or attempting to soothe herself in a world she can no longer touch. The sound is fleeting, often disappearing the instant anyone attempts to locate its source. Some of the most unsettling experiences occur in rooms once used for pediatric care. The small beds, now rusted and broken, still hold an energy of innocence and sorrow. Explorers have claimed to see fleeting shadows dart across the walls, or the fleeting outline of a small child sitting at the foot of a bed before vanishing entirely. The soft tap of tiny footsteps on the tile floors is often reported late at night, moving erratically as though the girl is wandering the halls in search of something or someone. These experiences leave many feeling watched, a sensation that is difficult to shake even after leaving the hospital. The main corridors, which once bustled with hospital activity, now amplify every creak and groan of the aging structure. Some visitors have described hearing the faint rattle of medical carts rolling through the hallways, accompanied by distant calls of nurses or doctors, though no one else is present. The hospital's intercom system, long disconnected, occasionally seems to spark to life, emitting static-laden sounds that mimic the voices of staff long gone. These auditory phenomena are often strongest near the pediatric wing, reinforcing the belief that the young girl's spirit dominates this part of the hospital. Even the hospital's equipment seems to retain echoes of the past. Wheelchairs, left abandoned for decades, sometimes move slightly as if pushed by invisible hands. For stands tilt or sway with no breeze to disturb them, and old patient charts have been found displaced, often lying in locations where no one remembers leaving them. Paranormal investigators have recorded low-frequency sounds and unexplained temperature drops near these objects, suggesting that the energy within Highland General is not merely residual but conscious, responding to those who intrude. The hospital's emergency room and surgical suites, while empty and crumbling, also harbor unsettling activity. Cold drafts rush through these rooms even when all windows and doors are sealed. Some visitors report hearing surgical tools clink together, as though a procedure is being prepared in silence. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed near operating tables, fleeting but unmistakable, disappearing when approached. Though the pediatric wing is the most active area, these phenomena extend throughout the hospital, as if the building itself carries the memories of every patient, nurse, and doctor who ever walked its halls. Outdoors, Highland General appears even more imposing. Its mid-century facade, cracked and overgrown with weeds, looms over the surrounding streets. Windows, shattered or opaque with dirt, seem to watch those who approach. At night, lights have been seen flickering inside, though the building has no power. Some claim to have observed a small figure at the window, peering out at the street before vanishing when a flashlight is directed toward it. Others report hearing a soft knock at the front doors, though the hospital is locked and abandoned. Mountain View Children's Hospital in Reno was once a beacon of hope for families across the region. Built in the early 20th century, it welcomed children suffering from illnesses that were difficult to treat at home. Bright hallways, cheerful murals, and the sounds of nurses calling patients by name filled the building with life. Laughter echoed through the wards, and parents clutched the hands of their children as doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to provide care. But by the 1950s, budget cuts forced the hospital to close its doors, leaving the building abandoned. Over the decades, the structure has fallen into decay. Yet visitors insist that the children who once ran its halls never truly left. Those who enter Mountain View today report experiences that defy explanation. The air inside feels heavier than normal, carrying a chill that lingers even in the daytime heat. Hallways that once brimmed with life are silent. Yet the faintest giggle or whisper can sometimes be heard, echoing off peeling walls. Explorers and urban adventurers alike have noticed tiny handprints appearing on dusty windows and door frames. Marks far too small to belong to anyone present. They vanish if approached too closely, as if the children are aware of being watched and retreat from human eyes. The most active areas seem to be the old pediatric wards. Rusted beds and broken toys scatter the floor, untouched by modern hands. Yet, at night, some of these toys appear to move on their own. A stuffed animal might shift slightly on a shelf. A small wooden train rolls across the floor. Or a mobile above a crib sways as if pushed by unseen fingers. Witnesses often describe hearing faint lullabies, soft songs that seem to originate from the empty rooms themselves. The melodies are fragmented, incomplete, fading in and out, as if the children are singing to comfort themselves in a place long abandoned by the living. Cold spots are a frequent phenomenon within the hospital. Entire rooms can drop several degrees in temperature without warning, leaving a biting chill that creeps through clothing and skin. Visitors report feeling small hands brushing against their shoulders or legs, fleeting touches that vanish the moment they turn to investigate. These sensations are strongest near the old wards and playrooms, suggesting that the children's spirits remain tethered to the spaces where they once lived and laughed. In the hallways, faint giggles and whispers are often heard alongside other, more unsettling phenomena. Footsteps echo along tiled floors, long since cracked and dusty. Occasionally, visitors have seen fleeting shadows dart across the walls, too small to be adult figures, and yet impossible to identify fully. Doors that are firmly closed sometimes creak open slowly, revealing empty rooms where the only movement is the flicker of a shadow or the gentle sway of an abandoned toy. Many have felt a presence watching them, a feeling of invisible eyes tracking each step through the abandoned corridors. The hospital's playrooms are among the most active areas. Broken crayons lie scattered across tables, and faded drawings cling to walls as faint reminders of long ago afternoons. Despite the decay, Objects sometimes shift on their own. Chairs slide a few inches across the floor. Books fall from shelves without cause. And rattles or small instruments occasionally clatter as if being handled. These sounds fade when investigated, leaving only the echo of empty walls and their own footsteps. Windows throughout the hospital reveal strange occurrences as well. Tiny handprints appear on the glass, often smeared or dusted with the residue of years of neglect. Some of these prints seem to move slightly when no one is nearby, climbing or sliding along the panes as if the children are tracing paths they once ran in life. Shadows sometimes appear on the outside of the windows, suggesting the presence of small figures standing just out of reach, only to vanish when a light is shown in their direction. Even the hospital stairwells, long abandoned and creaking under the weight of time, carry echoes of the past. Visitors have heard the faint patter of small feet ascending and descending the stairs, rhythmic and precise, though no one is present. Doors at the top of the stairwells sometimes rattle, and faint whispers or soft cries are reported by those brave enough to venture upwards. In some cases, explorers have seen small, fleeting silhouettes, as if a child were standing in the doorway, watching before disappearing into the darkness. Mountain View Children's Hospital stands as a testament to lives once lived and lost. Its crumbling walls and dusty floors bear the marks of decades, yet the memories of the children remain palpable. Those who walk its halls are often left with a sense of profound sadness mixed with wonder, feeling the lingering presence of spirits who cannot leave the place where they experienced both illness and fleeting joy. The faint giggles, tiny handprints, swaying toys, and distant lullabies are more than just strange occurrences. They are reminders of innocence, of life interrupted, and of the young souls that continue to wander the abandoned hospital corridors, forever tied to Mountain View. Pioneer County Asylum in Tonopah has long held a dark reputation, its history marked by tragedy and suffering. Established in the early 1900s to house those deemed mentally ill, the asylum grew quickly, accommodating patients from across the region. Its sprawling hallways and multiple wings were designed to provide care and treatment. Yet overcrowding and limited resources often left patients neglected and isolated. The asylum operated for decades, witnessing countless stories of despair and occasional recovery. But the fire that consumed one wing in the 1940s forever changed the institution, leaving behind an emptiness that was never truly silent. The fire erupted late one winter night, spreading rapidly through the wooden corridors of the East Wing. Flames devoured patient rooms, therapy halls, and offices, and the screams of those trapped still echo in the memories of locals who survived the tragedy. Though some escaped, many lives were lost, and the wing was never rebuilt. Since that day, visitors to the asylum report a heightened sense of the paranormal. The tragedy seems to have left its mark, embedding sorrow and unrest into the very walls. Those who wander the abandoned asylum speak first of the red glows that appear in the hallways of the burned wing. Even in the absence of fire or sunlight, a faint crimson light sometimes flickers along charred walls, as though the flames themselves never fully extinguished. Some describe it as a soft glow, almost like embers fading in the darkness, while others claim it grows brighter when they pause or approach the ruined rooms. Photographs taken in the corridors often reveal strange orbs of red light, hovering just above the floor or along damaged doorways. Whispers are another common phenomenon at Pioneer County Asylum. Passers-by report hearing soft voices carried by the wind, voices that seem to originate from the long-abandoned wards. Sometimes these whispers are indistinct murmurs. At other times, they form partial words or names, fragments of conversations frozen in time. A visitor might hear the faint call of a nurse checking on a patient or a pleading voice begging for help, only for the sounds to vanish when they turn to investigate. The source is never apparent, yet the effect is unmistakably an oppressive sense that the building remembers every life lost within its walls. Temperature drops are frequent throughout the asylum, particularly in areas once used as patient wards. Even on warm afternoons, the air can chill abruptly, leaving visitors shivering as they walk through the empty halls. Some claim the cold is accompanied by the sensation of being touched, as if invisible hands pass along shoulders or brush past their legs. These experiences are strongest near the fire-damaged wing, suggesting that the spirits of those who perished there remain tethered to the site of their deaths. The smell of smoke and charred wood is another eerie hallmark. Despite decades of abandonment, and even after modern renovations or nearby construction, people report the acrid scent of burned timber lingering in hallways that are otherwise clean or empty. It is a scent that rises and falls without warning, sometimes growing strong enough to make the eyes water, then fading as quickly as it came. This odor is often accompanied by the red glows and whispers, forming a multi-sensory experience that makes the presence of the past unmistakable. Sightings of shadowy figures are also common. Visitors describe fleeting shapes moving across corridors, sometimes appearing as patients in nightclothes or nurses carrying lanterns. These forms vanish when approached, leaving only the sense of lingering life that refuses to fade. Some witnesses have reported seeing small groups of these figures together, as though they are reenacting a moment from the asylum's history, endlessly repeating routines interrupted by tragedy. Others see only a single silhouette standing at the end of a hallway, motionless yet unmistakably present. The burnt wing itself seems to have a consciousness. Those who linger report that sounds of crackling fire can sometimes be heard, even though no flames exist. Doors in the wing creak open or slam shut on their own, and the floorboards occasionally groan under invisible weight. Photographs taken here often contain anomalous faint shapes in the background, red orbs or blurred figures that cannot be explained by camera error. Visitors have spoken of a feeling of being watched, as if the eyes of long-dead patients and staff follow every movement. Even outside the asylum, on the surrounding grounds, there are reports of unexplained phenomena. Some have heard footsteps crunching on the gravel paths leading to the main entrance, even when no one is present. The wind through nearby trees carries faint voices, and some passers-by swear they can see shadows moving behind boarded windows. Local residents warn that the spirits of Pioneer County Asylum extend beyond the building itself, reluctant to leave the site that witnessed so much suffering. Pioneer County Asylum in Tonopah is not merely an abandoned structure. It is a living reminder of the lives once contained within its walls. The red glows, whispers, temperature drops, and phantom figures are more than eerie occurrences. They are echoes of the human tragedy that unfolded there. The building holds the memories of those who died, those who survived, and those who endured suffering in isolation. Preserving them in a haunting tableau that remains visible to anyone willing to enter. The Silver State Tuberculosis Sanitarium in Hawthorne, Nevada, stands as a silent testament to a darker era of medical history. Established in the early 1930s, the facility was designed to isolate patients afflicted with tuberculosis, a disease that swept through communities with terrifying speed and lethality. Its sprawling grounds were carefully planned to provide fresh air and sunlight, essential elements in TB treatment at the time. Patients lived in austere isolation rooms, often for months or even years, as doctors attempted to curb the disease with rest, nutrition, and early forms of respiratory therapy. Though the sanitarium eventually closed decades ago, the echoes of its past remain, lingering like a shadow over the deserted halls. Visitors to the Silver State Tuberculosis Sanitarium often speak of a palpable heaviness that descends upon them the moment they step inside. The building is eerily quiet, yet the silence is deceptive. Some report hearing faint coughing echoes emanating from the abandoned isolation rooms, a sound that carries through the empty corridors as though the patients never left. The coughs vary in intensity, sometimes barely audible, a soft rasp, and at other times sharp and sudden, echoing as if someone stands just out of sight. These unexplained sounds unsettle even the most skeptical of visitors, reminding them of the suffering that once filled these rooms. Respirator masks, once used as part of patient care, are another frequent source of eerie activity. Hanging from ceilings or walls, these devices occasionally swing without warning, despite the absence of any drafts or movement. Witnesses describe the motion as slow and deliberate, as if the masks are responding to an unseen presence or invisible breath. Some have even reported the metallic clink of masks striking nearby equipment, a sound that seems impossibly coordinated for an empty room. Paranormal investigators have captured photographs where the masks appear slightly blurred or shifted, suggesting motion during long exposures. Shadows moving along the walls are a common phenomenon throughout the sanitarium. Visitors see indistinct figures gliding just beyond the edge of vision, only for the shapes to vanish when directly looked at. Sometimes these shadows resemble people in period clothing, their outlines echoing the long-abandoned uniforms of medical staff or the thin, frail forms of the patients themselves. At times, multiple shadows appear together, moving as if performing a routine, perhaps a doctor checking a chart, a nurse adjusting a respirator, or a patient pacing the floor. These visions often coincide with sudden drops in temperature, a chill that seems to follow the spectral figures as they traverse the halls. The isolation rooms themselves are particularly active. Visitors report that doors, once closed for months or years, swing open on their own, revealing the sterile interior in faded light. Footsteps are heard pacing the hallways, sometimes in slow, methodical rhythm, sometimes uneven and frantic. Some explorers have felt the sensation of being watched, their skin prickling as if the gaze of those who suffered still lingers in the corners. Laughter, soft and hollow, is occasionally heard, never cheerful, but more akin to nervous whispers or the frail sounds of children who once suffered under the weight of illness. Occasionally, the sanitarium produces more dramatic signs of life. Lights flicker in empty rooms, reflecting off the cracked glass of old windows. Furniture shifts slightly when no one is near, and occasionally, a patient bed or chair appears to have been used, as if someone just stood and moved away. Some visitors claim to feel sudden touches on their shoulders or backs, cold and fleeting, always leaving the sense that someone or something is close yet unseen. Many paranormal enthusiasts suggest that the spirits lingering in the Silver State Tuberculosis Sanitarium are tied to the suffering endured within its walls. Patients who died alone, in fear and pain, may have left behind traces of their anguish. Energy bound to the physical space of the building. Nurses and doctors who devoted their lives to the care of others may also remain, silently continuing their duties in a spectral echo of the past. The cumulative sorrow, fear, and perseverance of those who lived and died here appears to have imprinted itself on the sanitarium, creating a place where time feels suspended and history is never truly gone. Visitors also report disembodied voices calling out names, sometimes faint and incoherent, other times clearer, like a whisper just behind the ear. The names belong to no one present, often matching those found in old records of the patients. Some claim the voices are pleading for help, while others sound like guidance, offering unseen comfort. In some cases, footsteps move in counterpoint to the whispers, as if the voices belong to the shadows themselves, pacing or attending to invisible routines. Even the air inside the sanitarium seems haunted. Cold spots materialize unexpectedly, especially near the former patient wards and isolation rooms. The chill is sharp, causing breath to fog even on warm days, and sometimes coincides with a faint scent of medicinal antiseptic or the iron temps of old blood. These sensory reminders reinforce the idea that the past is never truly gone. Hear that the suffering and care that defined this place has left its mark in every corner, echoing in sound, sight, and temperature. The grounds surrounding the Silver State Tuberculosis Sanitarium contribute to its eerie atmosphere. Desert winds whistled through the abandoned buildings, carrying faint whispers and echoes across the dry landscape. Windows are broken, doors hang on rusted hinges, and the once pristine hallways crumble beneath the weight of neglect. Yet, despite its derelict state, the sanitarium seems alive to those who enter, as if the spirits are actively maintaining their presence, unwilling to let go. Desert Springs Psychiatric Hospital in Winnemucca, Nevada, sits abandoned today, but its history continues to echo through the empty halls and crumbling walls. Opened in the mid-20th century, it was intended as a modern facility for treating psychiatric patients. But the reality of life inside was far harsher. Patients endured long hours of confinement, rigid routines, and treatments that by today's standards would be considered extreme. Isolation rooms, padded cells, and long corridors became the daily environment for those suffering from mental illness, and the building itself absorbed decades of fear, pain, and despair. Today, visitors and paranormal investigators describe experiences that suggest those emotions never truly left, manifesting as ghostly activity that chills the living who dare to enter. From the moment one steps onto the grounds, a sense of unease pervades the air. The hospital is a sprawling structure of faded concrete and broken windows, long overgrown by desert brush. The silence here is oppressive, heavier than the surrounding emptiness of the Nevada desert. Visitors often describe an immediate drop in temperature as they walk through the main entrance, a cold that seems unnatural, settling deep into the bones. Some have reported feeling the sensation of unseen eyes following them, an almost tactile pressure of being watched by those who no longer walk among the living. Inside, the hallways are a labyrinth of peeling paint, cracked tiles, and rusting metal railings. Many who explore the building claim to hear faint screams echoing from the upper floors, shrill cries that rise and fall with no identifiable source. The sounds are often accompanied by inexplicable cold spots, sharp chills that seem to drift along the corridors and linger near rooms that once housed the most disturbed patients. Some guests have reported sudden dizziness or a disorienting feeling, as if the energy of the building itself is pressing down on them. Padded cells and isolation rooms are the epicenter of the hospital's paranormal activity. Visitors frequently report seeing shadowy figures in straitjackets standing silently in the corners, their presence palpable but fleeting. These apparitions often vanish when approached, leaving only the lingering impression of a human form and a faint rustling sound, like fabric moving in a breeze that doesn't exist. Some explorers claim to have heard the whispered names of patients or staff, indistinct but urgent, echoing off the walls in a way that seems intended to be heard only by those who are truly listening. Rooms that once held electroshock therapy machines and early psychiatric equipment are not exempt from the phenomena. Flickering lights, even when electricity is disconnected, create ghostly silhouettes on the walls. Chairs rock slowly on their own, and medical tools are sometimes found shifted from where they were left, as if invisible hands are still conducting some forgotten procedure. Visitors report hearing the hiss of old oxygen tanks or the faint clatter of instruments, reinforcing the sense that some spirits are trapped in a loop, endlessly reliving their final days in the hospital. Footsteps are a common occurrence throughout the building. They come from empty wings, echoing in uneven rhythms, sometimes slow and deliberate, other times rapid and erratic. Some guests describe footsteps that follow them down the hallways, stopping when they stop, vanishing only when they reach the end of a corridor. The sounds are often accompanied by faint murmurs or whispers, sometimes the repetition of a single word, sometimes unintelligible, as though the echoes of conversations long past have become embedded in the walls themselves. Several visitors have experienced more direct forms of contact, hands brushing against shoulders or arms, icy gusts that follow them from one room to another, and sudden pressure on the chest are reported, always fleeting but unmistakable. These sensations are accompanied by the feeling that the building itself is alive with residual energy, a collective memory of suffering that has seeped into the very structure of Desert Springs. Even the exterior of the hospital contributes to its haunted reputation. Desert winds whistle through broken windows and open doorways, carrying faint echoes that seem almost human. Some explorers have reported seeing figures moving in the shadows beyond the building, only to vanish when approached. At night, the desert landscape around the hospital seems unnaturally dark and silent, as if the building has absorbed the natural light and sound, leaving an eerie void. Many paranormal investigators believe that the spirits of Desert Springs Psychiatric Hospital are bound to the intense suffering endured within its walls. Patients who lived and died under strict and isolating conditions may have left behind an imprint of their fear and anguish, a presence that persists long after their physical bodies have gone. Similarly, staff who worked within the hospital's rigid and often stressful environment may continue their duties in spectral form, their echoes moving through the hallways as if still caring for patients who are no longer there. Despite the building's decay, Desert Springs remains a focal point for those seeking a connection to the past. The cries, footsteps, flickering lights, cold spots, and shadowy figures all point to a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Visitors leave with a lingering sense of having glimpsed lives once trapped in a system that prioritized confinement over compassion, their memories echoing through the building long after the doors are locked. Clark County Memorial Hospital in Boulder City, Nevada, stands as a relic of both hope and tragedy. Built during the era of the Hoover Dam's construction, the hospital was intended to serve the thousands of workers who risked their lives, shaping one of America's greatest engineering feats. While it offered care for injuries and illnesses, the hospital was quickly overwhelmed. The sheer volume of patients, coupled with limited medical knowledge and the harsh realities of the early 20th century, meant that many never left its walls alive. Today, the building sits mostly abandoned, yet its history lingers, and many who venture inside speak of experiences that suggest the past is far from silent. Visitors often describe an eerie, heavy atmosphere the moment they approach the hospital. Even in daylight, the air feels thick and oppressive, carrying a subtle chill that seems to seep into the bones. The hospital's halls are lined with peeling paint, worn linoleum floors, and rusting metal railings, all bearing the patina of decades of neglect. Yet, the decay is only part of the haunting. Many report sounds that defy explanation, noises that seem to originate from another time entirely. Ambulance sirens are frequently heard, echoing through the empty corridors, though no vehicles are near. The wailing is distant, yet unmistakably real, sending chills down the spine of anyone present. Inside the hospital, the wards are a haunting testament to the patients who once occupied them. Shadowy figures are sometimes glimpsed moving between rooms, appearing and disappearing with a dim flicker of light through broken windows. These apparitions are often described as nurses in period uniforms, silently patrolling the hallways as if still tending to those long gone. Some guests report seeing them make rounds in ghostly repetition, stopping beside empty beds or disappearing through walls, as though the hospital's structure itself has become a thin veil between the living and the dead. Patients who suffered from untreated injuries and infections are said to leave behind an imprint of their final moments. Visitors sometimes hear muffled groans or whispers from rooms that appear empty, soft voices calling out in distress. Footsteps echo where no one walks, and the occasional thump of a falling object or the creak of an old bed frame is enough to convince explorers that the building is alive with lingering spirits. In some areas, the temperature drops suddenly, cold spots that seem to follow those who wander too far down a hallway. The hospital's old operating rooms are particularly unsettling. Flickering shadows and the metallic scent of unseen instruments create a sense that the ghosts of surgeons and nurses remain tethered to their work. Some visitors have reported hearing the subtle rhythm of a heart monitor or the whisper of surgical instructions, even though all equipment has long since been removed. A faint, almost imperceptible glow sometimes emanates from empty rooms, suggesting the presence of entities whose lives ended within these walls. These experiences are often fleeting but leave a lasting impression on those who hear them. Guests describe a sense of being watched, or the sudden, inexplicable movement of objects, as if unseen hands reach out in a world that has forgotten them. The emergency rooms, once bustling with chaos during the construction of the Hoover Dam, are said to retain echoes of urgency and panic. Visitors report hearing the shuffle of hurried footsteps, the murmur of medical staff, and the distant wail of ambulance sirens, often in perfect synchronization. Some claim that the sounds are so vivid that they momentarily feel as if they've stepped back in time, into a place where life and death were in constant tension. Hallways often play tricks on the senses. Shadows appear at the edge of vision, only to vanish when turned toward, and doors creak as if pushed open by invisible hands. The occasional clatter of a falling tray, or the low hum of machinery that no longer exists, adds to the sense that the hospital is alive with residual energy. Many paranormal investigators have set up cameras and audio equipment, capturing unexplained orbs of light, voices, and fleeting figures that defy conventional explanation. Even outside the building, the presence of the past is palpable. Desert winds whistle through broken windows and empty doorways, carrying faint echoes that sound suspiciously like human conversation. The surrounding area, once teeming with workers and the machinery of the Hoover Dam, is now silent. Yet the energy of those who lived and died there continues to reverberate through the land. For those who venture inside Clark County Memorial Hospital, the experience is more than just eerie. It is immersive. The combination of historical tragedy, residual emotional energy, and inexplicable phenomena creates a place where the veil between the living and the dead feels particularly thin. Shadowy nurses patrolling empty wards, the echo of ambulance sirens, and whispered voices call attention to the countless lives that intersected with this building. Visitors leave with an awareness that Clark County Memorial Hospital is not merely abandoned. It is a repository of memory, a haunting reminder of the sacrifices, suffering, and lingering spirits of a bygone era. Red Desert Veterans Hospital in Alamo, Nevada, is a sprawling, abandoned complex with a history steeped in both service and sorrow. Established in the mid-20th century, it was designed to care for veterans suffering from chronic injuries, mental trauma, and the lingering effects of war. The hospital was a place of healing, but it also became a place where many veterans spent their final days, unable to leave the building's sterile wards. After decades of operation, Red Desert Veterans Hospital was closed, leaving the memories of its patients frozen in its walls. Those who visit today often report experiences that suggest the spirits of those who died within its halls never truly departed. From the moment visitors approach the hospital, there is a palpable sense of unease. The sprawling campus is silent, except for the occasional whistle of desert wind through broken windows. Yet even in broad daylight, many report sudden cold drafts that seem out of place in the arid landscape. Some say it feels as though unseen eyes are watching, tracing their movements as they walk toward the main entrance. The building's architecture, with its long corridors, high ceilings, and rows of patient rooms, amplifies the sense of isolation, as though the hospital itself has absorbed the sorrow of decades and refuses to release it. Inside, the atmosphere grows heavier. The hallways are lined with peeling paint and rusted metal railings. But more striking than the decay are the sounds or the echoes that many visitors report. Faint footsteps are often heard moving down empty corridors, sometimes quick and urgent, other times slow and deliberate. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed in the corners of hallways, often in the shape of men and women wearing military uniforms from decades past. These figures vanish when approached, leaving only the faint scent of old clothing and the residual chill of their presence. Patient rooms hold some of the most chilling phenomena. Visitors describe the sudden sensation of someone standing nearby, only to turn and find the space empty. Occasionally, doors creak open by themselves, or hospital beds shift slightly, as if someone unseen has adjusted them. The faint scent of antiseptic, mingled with the musk of aged uniforms, has been reported throughout the building, often strongest near former wards and rooms that housed those who did not survive. Some paranormal enthusiasts claim the smell is so strong it is almost suffocating, a sensory echo of the hospital's past. The therapy and common areas of the hospital are no less unsettling. Visitors report hearing faint conversations, whispers of voices, discussing treatments, or sharing memories, though no one is present. In some rooms, chairs rock back and forth on their own, and medical equipment hums or clicks as if still in use. Some who have explored the building at night report seeing the translucent figures of nurses or orderlies moving quietly through the halls, their actions deliberate, attending to patients long gone. These apparitions are often described as sorrowful, sometimes pausing to glance at visitors as if assessing whether they are intruders or allies. In certain areas, the presence of veterans is particularly strong. Former patient wards seem to hold residual energy, with visitors claiming to hear the murmurs of men recounting their experiences in service. Some calm, some anguished. Cold spots are common, often forming in the center of empty rooms. And some explorers describe feeling a sudden, heavy pressure on their shoulders or chests, as though the weight of the past is momentarily made tangible. Occasionally, the faint sounds of laughter or song from long-ago gatherings can be heard. Distorted by time but unmistakably human, the hospital's chapel is another locus of paranormal activity. Once a place of solace for patients and staff, it now holds an eerie quiet, punctuated by sudden chills and flickering shadows. Visitors have reported hearing ghostly prayers, sometimes whispered, sometimes echoed across the empty pews. Figures in robes, believed to be chaplains or religious staff, are occasionally seen moving along the aisles, vanishing when approached. Some claim to hear bells tolling from unseen towers, or faint organ music playing with no instrument in sight. The effect is one of suspended time, where the line between the living and the departed seems impossibly thin. Even outside the hospital, the influence of the past is felt. Desert winds carry indistinct murmurs that sound almost like conversations between old friends. And lights in the empty windows sometimes flicker as if the building itself were breathing. At night, shadowy figures are occasionally seen pacing the perimeter, vanishing into the darkness before anyone can draw near. Those who linger too long often report a lingering unease, as though the weight of decades of suffering and service has seeped into their own senses. For those who venture into Red Desert Veterans Hospital, the experience is immersive and unsettling. The combination of historical tragedy, residual emotion, and unexplained phenomena creates a place where the past feels alive. Shadowy soldiers, ghostly medical staff, and whispers of patients converge to remind visitors of the lives once lived here and the lingering energy that refuses to fade. Silver Mesa Sanitarium for Women, nestled in the remote deserts near Ely, Nevada, is a place where the echoes of the past refuse to remain silent. Built in the early 20th century, the facility was dedicated solely to the care or confinement of women struggling with mental health conditions at a time when understanding and compassion were often overshadowed by strict rules and harsh treatments. Over the decades, thousands of women passed through its doors, many of them never leaving. Today, the abandoned sanitarium is a haunting reminder of their presence, with visitors reporting experiences that suggest the spirits of Silver Mesa's residents are still very much among the decaying walls. The approach to Silver Mesa sets the tone for what lies inside. The building sits isolated, surrounded by desert plains that stretch endlessly under the harsh sun by day and a chilling moon at night. Even before entering, many report a sudden drop in temperature, as though the air itself carries the weight of decades of sorrow. The main facade, once pristine and imposing, now crumbles, with shattered windows and rusted gates that creak ominously in the wind. Yet the true eeriness begins when stepping inside the sanitarium's halls, where the heavy scent of aged wood, faded disinfectant, and something indefinably sorrowful lingers. Inside, the corridors are long and narrow, lined with patient rooms and locked treatment chambers. Visitors frequently describe the sensation of being watched, even when alone. Doors that should be latched swing open slowly, and shadows appear at the edges of vision, vanishing when looked at directly. The quiet is punctuated by whispers, unintelligible at first but gradually forming the impression of women speaking softly among themselves. Some claim to hear the distant shuffle of slippers along the floors, or the faint murmur of conversation from rooms that have been empty for decades. The sanitarium's chapel is a focal point of supernatural activity. Once a place of solace and prayer, it now radiates an otherworldly presence. Visitors often report hearing ghostly singing echoing across the abandoned pews. The voices are soft, melodic, and haunting, as though the women are performing hymns that were long forgotten by the living. Sometimes, the sound of a piano or organ can be faintly heard, even though no instruments remain. Rosary beads are frequently discovered on the floor, neatly arranged as if placed there intentionally, though no one has entered the chapel. The air in this space often carries a chill so intense that it causes the breath to fog, even in the middle of a hot desert day. Patient rooms and former treatment areas are no less unnerving. Many visitors report objects moving on their own, chairs shifting slightly, windows creaking open, or drawers sliding as though someone had handled them moments before. Some rooms are filled with sudden cold spots, which seem to linger in the center of the space. Footsteps echo in empty corridors, sometimes quick and nervous, sometimes slow and deliberate. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed moving past doorways or sitting in chairs. Their forms semi-transparent and indistinct, yet undeniably human. These apparitions are often described as sorrowful, their gestures subtle, as though trapped in a cycle of daily routines from long ago. The sanitarium's treatment areas, including therapy rooms and administrative offices, also carry traces of lingering presence. Visitors frequently report the faint sound of pens scratching on paper or the rustle of ledger pages, as if nurses or clerks are still at work. Some have heard soft chanting, rhythmic and deliberate, which they later realize echoes the cadence of prayers said during the hospital's operation. Even in empty offices, the sensation of someone sitting nearby is common, with invisible hands brushing lightly against shoulders or an inexplicable weight pressing down on chests, creating a feeling of oppressive sorrow. Outside the main building, the grounds contribute to the haunting atmosphere. Overgrown gardens and abandoned walkways hold a stillness that is unsettling. Yet occasionally, figures are seen pacing slowly, gliding along paths that have not been maintained for decades. The desert winds seem to carry distant voices, laughter, or murmured conversations, and the faint jingling of chains or rosaries has been reported, as though the spirits are roaming beyond the walls of the sanitarium itself. Even at dawn, when the sun bathes the desert in light, the air can feel heavy and charged with unseen energy, a lingering reminder of the lives that were confined within these walls. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike note that the haunting of Silver Mesa is unlike ordinary ghost stories. The spirits do not seem aggressive or malevolent, but rather trapped, mournful, and endlessly repeating fragments of their former lives. The presence of the women who lived, suffered, and sometimes died here is palpable. Cold drafts, shadowy forms, ghostly singing, and the inexplicable appearance of rosary beads all point to a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is fragile. Exploring Silver Mesa Sanitarium is a journey through time and memory. Every step, every faint whisper, and every shifting shadow serves as a reminder of the women who passed through this facility and the hardships they endured. The echoes of their voices, their prayers, and their songs linger, creating an atmosphere both sorrowful and strangely reverent. To walk the corridors of Silver Mesa is to step into a past that refuses to let go, where the spirits of those confined here continue their silent vigil, haunting the halls, the chapel, and the desert surrounding the building. Desert Winds Children's Convalescent Hospital, located on the outskirts of Fallon, Nevada, is a silent testament to a time when polio swept through the country, leaving countless children bedridden and families desperate for care. Established in the early 20th century, the facility offered a place for rest, recovery, and therapy for young patients. Its sprawling campus once rang with laughter, the squeak of wheelchairs, and the faint melodies of children humming to pass the hours. But after decades of service, Desert Winds closed its doors, and the building abandoned and weathered by the harsh Nevada sun, and Desert Winds became a place of eerie quiet, where the spirits of its former residents are said to linger. Visitors approaching the old convalescent hospital often describe a sudden shift in atmosphere. The air feels heavier, cooler than the desert around it, carrying the faintest echoes of long-gone activity. Even before stepping through the crumbling front doors, the desert wind seems to whisper in a way that chills the spine. Some claim to see fleeting shadows moving past broken windows or the reflection of small figures darting across hallways, long, empty. The building itself, with peeling paint, shuttered windows, and rusted railings, suggests neglect, yet the energy inside tells a different story. That of the children who once filled the halls with life, and now haunt them in restless echoes. Inside, the hallways stretch like forgotten arteries through the facility, lined with rooms that once held the hopes and fears of young patients. Visitors often report hearing tiny footsteps echoing across the floors, moving in patterns that mimic children running and playing. These sounds appear and vanish without cause, leaving those who witness them unsure if they are truly hearing the past or merely imagining it. Sometimes, the squeak of an empty wheelchair is heard along the corridors, as if an unseen hand is propelling it forward, turning corners with deliberate precision and stopping abruptly when approached. The hospital's therapy rooms are particularly active. Once places of recovery, they now seem imbued with a spectral presence. Faint crying can be heard, soft and intermittent, echoing in spaces where no child has been seen in decades. Some visitors have reported seeing small, shadowy figures sitting near beds or peering through broken windows, their forms indistinct, yet undeniably human. The figures vanish when anyone tries to approach, leaving behind only the sense that something unseen is observing, waiting, or simply trapped in the memories of the building. Even the rooms that were used for treatment carry their own supernatural signatures. Visitors frequently report cold spots that appear suddenly, lingering around certain corners or beds, and fading as they move away. Objects seem to shift slightly, chairs leaning at impossible angles, or medical equipment found in positions it had never been left. Doors that were locked decades ago sometimes creak open, only to slam shut moments later. Some say these occurrences are the spirits of children, reliving routines from their days at Desert Winds. Endlessly repeating actions, once familiar and comforting. The nurse's station, once a hub of organization and care, is not exempt from the haunting. Voices are often heard, hear soft, maternal tones of reassurance, or the gentle call of a child's name. Occasionally, the sound of a chair being pulled back or the clatter of instruments rolling across a counter is reported, as if the staff of the past are continuing their duties long after the lights went out. Some investigators claim to have captured these sounds on recording devices, noting that they resemble nothing mechanical or natural, but rather a ghostly recreation of the hospital's former rhythm. Visitors also describe a feeling of being watched, an omnipresent awareness that seems to follow them from room to room. It is not threatening, yet it is undeniably intense. Some report glimpsing small silhouettes standing at the ends of hallways or disappearing behind doors that have been closed for years. Others claim that during their time inside, faint laughter rings through the empty halls, sometimes joyous, sometimes tinged with the sorrow of children who never fully recovered. The exterior grounds of Desert Winds contribute to the haunting ambience. Overgrown gardens, rusting swings, and empty play areas stand as reminders of a time when the children of Fallon played and recovered here. At night, visitors have reported shadows moving through these areas. Small figures running across the cracked pavement or standing motionless near windows, staring at the world outside. Even in daylight, the wind carries whispers that seem to come from nowhere, the faintest echoes of voices long silenced. Despite its abandonment, the convalescent hospital is not malevolent. The spirits appear to be remnants of lives once lived, caught between the world they knew and the one they never truly left. They are remembered in the echoes of footsteps, the distant laughter, the fleeting glimpses of children who once filled the halls with hope. For those who explore Desert Winds, the experience is equal parts eerie and poignant, a reminder of the fragility of life, the persistence of memory, and the lingering presence of those who lived, suffered, and found temporary solace within its walls. Oasis General Hospital in Ely, Nevada, stands as a decaying monument to a bygone era when the mining industry thrived and the town's population demanded modern medical care. Built in the mid-20th century, it served miners, their families, and the broader community, offering everything from routine treatment to emergency care. For decades, the hospital bustled with life, a clatter of carts along polished hallways, the distant hum of medical machinery, and the soft voices of nurses tending patients. But as mining dwindled and the town's fortunes waned, the hospital was shuttered, leaving behind a sprawling, hollow structure whose halls have become the domain of restless spirits. Visitors to Oasis General often describe an immediate drop in temperature upon approaching the building. Even in the heat of the Nevada sun, the air near the front entrance feels heavy and cold, a subtle warning of what lies within. The hospital's facade, marked by cracked concrete and faded paint, hints at years of neglect, Yet the activity inside is anything but lifeless. Many who venture through its abandoned corridors report an overwhelming sense of being watched, as though unseen eyes follow them from room to room. The building seems alive, though not with people. The pulse that echoes here belongs to the memories of those who once walked its hallways. The most active part of the hospital is said to be the morgue. Though long unused, its cold, metal drawers appear to move on their own. Visitors have recounted the eerie sight of drawers sliding open slowly, then snapping shut without cause, as if responding to an invisible force. Paranormal enthusiasts claim these occurrences are the residual echoes of patients who died in the hospital. Their spirits trapped in a place they once knew intimately. The air in the morgue carries an unnatural chill, and even the bravest explorers report goosebumps as they step across the tiled floor, half expecting to see a figure emerge from the shadows. Beyond the morgue, the hallways of Oasis General are filled with cold spots that shift unpredictably. One moment, a section of the corridor feels normal. The next, a piercing chill descends, freezing breath in the air and leaving visitors shivering. These cold spots often precede other phenomena: faint whispers, distant footsteps, or the metallic squeak of an empty gurney moving across the floor. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures flit past doorways or peer around corners before vanishing, leaving only the echo of hurried movement. The walls, though cracked and faded, seem to absorb and reflect the energy of the departed, magnifying the sense that this hospital is still occupied in some spectral way. The patient rooms themselves carry their own stories. In these silent chambers, visitors report the faint scent of antiseptic lingering, despite years of abandonment. Occasionally, soft murmurs or crying are heard, the kind of sounds one might expect from a child or elderly patient calling for help. Lights that have long since been disconnected sometimes flicker, casting ghostly glows across peeling wallpaper and rusting bed frames. Some claim that medical instruments left behind: stethoscopes, thermometers, stands move slightly, as if being used by hands invisible to the living. These subtle movements create an unsettling sense that the hospital's staff and patients continue their routines in a world only partially connected to the present. The former nurses' stations and administrative offices also host unexplained phenomena. Visitors report hearing the shuffle of papers, the soft clatter of keys, or whispers of names that vanish when called. Some investigators have recorded these sounds, noting that they do not match any mechanical or environmental source. In many cases, people feel a presence close by, a sensation of someone standing just behind them, even when the room appears empty. It is as if the hospital's memory of care and vigilance has become a lingering force, tied to the spirits of those who once worked tirelessly within its walls. Even the hospital's exterior grounds carry an air of lingering energy. Overgrown landscaping, cracked pavement, and rusted signage contribute to the feeling of abandonment. Yet at night, shadowy figures have been seen walking the perimeter, passing behind windows that reflect nothing when approached. Some claim to hear faint voices drifting from the building, calling out to the living in a language only partially understood. The nearby parking areas, empty and cracked, sometimes echo with the sounds of vehicles rolling down the lot, though no cars are present. Despite the unsettling occurrences, Oasis General Hospital does not appear overtly malevolent. The spirits seem tied to the place itself, echoing the lives, work, and final moments of the patients and staff who once occupied the building. Many of the phenomena: moving objects, sudden cold spots, faint moans, feel like remnants of routines and events that cannot rest. Visitors often describe an eerie sense of poignancy, a reminder that the hospital was once a place of hope, care, and life, even as it has become a haven for memories that refuse to fade. Desert Peaks Sanatorium in Tonopah, Nevada, looms against the barren desert horizon as a relic of a time when mining shaped the fate of the region. Built in the early 20th century to care for miners suffering from lung disease, it was a place of healing amidst the harsh desert environment. Patients with silicosis, tuberculosis, and other respiratory ailments were admitted here, seeking treatment from doctors and nurses who worked long, grueling hours. For decades, the sanatorium operated as a sanctuary for the sick. its halls filled with the sounds of labored breathing, distant coughing, and the faint clatter of medical equipment. But when mining declined and the facility eventually closed, Desert Peaks became abandoned, leaving behind an unsettling echo of the lives once lived within its walls. Visitors who approach Desert Peaks today are immediately struck by an unnerving quiet. The desert wind sweeps across the cracked concrete and sun-bleached walls, carrying an unnatural chill that seems out of place in the arid landscape. Once inside, the atmosphere grows heavier. The air feels cold and still, pressing down like the weight of history itself. Many report a sense of being watched, as though unseen eyes follow their movements along the long corridors lined with peeling paint and rusting fixtures. It is here, in these abandoned halls, that the sanatorium's most persistent hauntings are said to occur. The laughter of children and adults alike has been reported echoing through the corridors, though no living soul is present. Witnesses describe it as distant at first, almost indistinct, then growing closer and more vivid, resonating from empty patient rooms and deserted wards. The laughter is often accompanied by the sound of footsteps, sometimes shuffling along hallways, other times climbing staircases or crossing rooms. The strange cadence of these movements suggests more than random echoes. It is as if the spirits of patients and staff still wander the halls, moving as they did in life, caught forever in the routine of a hospital that no longer exists. One of the more peculiar phenomena reported at Desert Peaks involves floating mining helmets. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike have described seeing these helmets suspended in midair, drifting silently through corridors or appearing near former patient rooms. Some speculate these are the remnants of miners who passed away here, the helmets acting as symbolic anchors to their earthly labors. Others claim the helmets move deliberately, guiding observers along certain paths, or vanishing entirely when approached. The effect is unnerving, as if the weight of the miner's toil and suffering persists in a spectral form, refusing to remain silent. Temperature fluctuations are another hallmark of Desert Peaks. Sudden drops in temperature are common, often occurring without warning or apparent source. A visitor might be walking through a hallway in relative warmth when an icy chill envelops the room, leaving breath visible in the air. These chills are often accompanied by other disturbances, flickering lights, the sound of doors creaking, or the distant echo of a cough. Many believe these phenomena are tied to the lingering spirits of the patients who once struggled to breathe in the very halls where the cold now presses against the skin of the living. Patient rooms and treatment areas carry their own spectral stories. The air still retains the faint scent of antiseptic, a ghostly reminder of the hospital routines long abandoned. Some visitors report hearing whispers, gentle murmurs, and fragmented conversations that seem to drift from one empty room to another. Medical instruments, left to rust and decay, are said to move slightly on their own, as if being handled by unseen hands. Beds shift, wheelchairs rock, and charts flutter across desks with no apparent cause, creating the unmistakable sense that the hospital's former inhabitants are still tending to their work, bound to the place by memories and unfinished business. The sanatoriums, stairwells, and hallways amplify these sensations. Visitors often speak of an oppressive weight in the air, an almost physical presence that seems to brush against their shoulders as they move. Shadows are frequently glimpsed in peripheral vision, figures that vanish when looked at directly. The building itself seems to respond to the living, its empty walls reflecting and magnifying the energy of those who died within. Some claim to hear the distant clanging of mining tools, an auditory echo of the labor that brought so many to Desert Peaks in the first place. It is as if the hospital exists in two planes at once, one of the living world and another of memory, suffering, and unfinished business. Outside, the grounds of Desert Peaks are equally haunted. The desert sands swirl against rusted railings, and the distant wind carries fragments of sound that seem to emanate from the building itself. On nights when the moon casts long shadows across the abandoned facade, visitors report seeing figures walking near windows or along crumbling walkways, only to vanish when approached. Footsteps sometimes follow across empty courtyards, and the occasional sound of laughter or coughing drifts through the night air, as if the sanatorium refuses to remain silent, even when the desert sleeps. Despite the unsettling occurrences, Desert Peak's sanatorium is not thought to be malicious. The phenomena reported here: the laughter, the floating helmets, the temperature drops. The footsteps seem to be echoes of the lives once lived within the building. They are reminders of a time when the building was a place of both hope and despair, a haven for the sick and a testament to the human toll of mining life in the Nevada desert. Sahara Plains Mental Hospital in Ely, Nevada, casts a long shadow across the desert, a relic of a time when mental health care was often harsh, overcrowded, and isolated. Built in the early 20th century, the facility was designed to house hundreds of patients from across the state, many of whom suffered from conditions misunderstood or stigmatized by society. Over the decades, the hospital became a microcosm of despair and hope, with its wards filled with patients seeking relief and doctors and nurses attempting to administer care under difficult circumstances. Yet, the hospital's sudden closure left much of its history frozen in time. And today, Sahara Plains is infamous not for its medical achievements, but for its lingering spirits. Visitors who approach the hospital for the first time are immediately struck by its enormity. The sprawling brick and concrete structure stretches across the desert, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the emptiness beyond. The desert winds whip through the cracked and weathered walls, carrying a sense of desolation that feels unnatural, almost alive. Inside, the silence is palpable, broken only by the occasional creak of decaying wood or the faint echo of distant footsteps. It is within these corridors that the paranormal reputation of Sahara Plains comes alive, with countless accounts of spectral activity reported over the years. Many who enter the hospital speak of seeing apparitions pacing the halls. Nurses in period uniforms glide silently along the corridors, appearing to check on patients who no longer exist. Their movements are deliberate and calm, yet their presence is accompanied by an eerie stillness, as if the air itself respects the routines of a bygone era. Visitors have reported the faint swish of their skirts or the soft click of shoes on linoleum. Yet, when approached, these figures vanish as though absorbed by the walls themselves. Some describe patients walking beside them, wandering aimlessly through hallways, sometimes stopping to stare at an empty room before slowly fading into the shadows. Locked rooms and abandoned wards are particularly active. Many of these spaces are off-limits to the living, yet cries, whispers, and muffled laughter have been reported coming from behind the heavy doors. Some visitors claim they have heard the voices of patients calling out names, pleading for help, or murmuring secrets that dissolve into the air before they can be understood. The intensity of these sounds varies, sometimes faint and distant, like a memory, other times sharp and near, causing the spine to tingle and hearts to race. Doors rattle without wind, and keys sometimes seem to turn in invisible locks, as if the spirits themselves are testing the boundaries of the spaces they once inhabited. Temperature fluctuations are another common phenomenon at Sahara Plains. Cold spots form suddenly, often surrounding particular beds or hallways, leaving visible breath in the desert heat. These chills are sometimes accompanied by the sense of a presence brushing against one's arm or shoulder, an almost physical reminder that the spirits are not content with emptiness. Witnesses have also reported fleeting shadows along walls, figures moving just beyond their peripheral vision, and reflections in mirrors that do not match the living occupants. Lights in some rooms flicker sporadically, despite the absence of electricity, adding a surreal layer to the already unsettling environment. The hospital's common areas, including the dining hall, therapy rooms, and nurses' stations, retain an air of spectral life. Chairs rock gently on their own, and tables seem to shift slightly, as though a patient or staff member just moved them moments before. Visitors often hear the faint rustle of papers, the soft clinking of dishes, or the sound of a wheelchair rolling across the floor, long after all living occupants have left. Many believe that these phenomena are residual echoes, the hospital's daily routines repeating endlessly in the afterlife, a frozen reflection of life that once teemed within these walls. The hallways leading to the basement and treatment wings are particularly unnerving. Shadows stretch unnaturally along peeling walls, and faint moans can be heard emanating from empty treatment rooms. Some claim to see figures in straitjackets pacing deliberately, their movements mechanical and hopeless. The combination of the cold, the distant cries, and the flickering shadows creates an atmosphere that is both oppressive and hypnotic, as if the hospital itself is alive, holding the energy of countless lives caught between the mortal world and something beyond. Outside, the grounds of Sahara Plains are no less haunted. Desert sands swirl around the building's foundation, carrying distant sounds from the hospital into the night. The occasional visitor has reported seeing figures walking past broken windows, moving along the roof, or pausing at doorways, their forms hazy and insubstantial. Footsteps echo across the concrete paths, sometimes approaching and retreating in rhythm with the visitor's own steps. Even the desert wind seems to carry the faint murmurs of the past, reminding travelers that this place was once alive with the struggles, fears, and fleeting joys of those confined within. Despite its unsettling reputation, Sahara Plains Mental Hospital is not necessarily considered malevolent. The phenomena: nurses gliding along corridors, patients wandering wards, whispers behind locked doors are often described as remnants of the lives that once filled the building. They are echoes of human suffering and care, memories preserved in walls that refuse to let go. Many who experience the hauntings describe a mixture of fear and reverence, sensing that these spirits are bound to the hospital by the intensity of their existence, by unfinished routines, and by the abrupt ending of a chapter of life they could not control. Black Rock County Hospital in Winnemucca, Nevada, is a building frozen in time, a relic of an era when mining families relied on its care in life's most desperate moments. Established in the early 20th century, it served miners and their families who often faced hazardous working conditions, chronic illness, and injuries that required immediate attention. Though intended as a sanctuary for healing, the hospital became a place of sorrow as countless patients passed away within its walls. Over the decades, the hospital's reputation shifted from a site of care to a site of lingering spirits, drawing paranormal enthusiasts and the curious alike to explore its empty corridors and echoing rooms. Walking up to the hospital, visitors notice its imposing facade, weathered by decades of desert winds and neglect. The once bright windows are now clouded with dust, some cracked and broken, while the doors sag slightly on their hinges. Even in daylight, the building radiates an unsettling presence, as if it is aware of the countless souls who once passed through. Locals often advise against entering alone, claiming that the spirits within are most active when the living walk unaccompanied through the deserted halls. Inside, the hospital retains an eerie quiet, broken only by the occasional creak of old floorboards or the whisper of wind through broken windows. The chapel, in particular, is frequently mentioned in reports of paranormal activity. Visitors have claimed to hear faint funeral music echoing softly through the room, even when the instruments themselves are absent. The music is described as solemn, drawn out, almost as if a phantom organist plays for an invisible congregation. Some say the melodies are remnants of services held decades ago, the echoes of grief and prayer lingering in the space long after the last congregation departed. The hallways of Black Rock County Hospital are especially active. Shadows are often reported moving along the corridors, flitting between doorways and vanishing when approached. These shapes are rarely solid, more like dark silhouettes that seem aware of observers, watching and retreating in silence. At times, the air grows inexplicably cold, with sudden chills sweeping through sections of the hospital. Many visitors describe the sensation of being followed, though no one else is present, and the faint sound of footsteps sometimes keeps pace with them before fading into the distance. One of the most unsettling areas is the morgue and the old casket storage rooms. Witnesses have described casket lids shaking, as if the deceased are restless or attempting to communicate. In some instances, the sound of soft knocks or thuds echoes through the hall, each one followed by a sudden, oppressive silence. The faint metallic scent of old embalming chemicals seems to linger, even after ventilation systems have long stopped functioning. adding a tangible reminder of the hospital's grim history. The atmosphere is heavy, charged with the weight of lives lost and stories unfinished, creating a sense of reverence mixed with unease for anyone who dares to explore these rooms. Patients' wards are no less active. Faded bed frames, peeling paint, and rusted medical equipment create a stark visual reminder of the hospital's past. While paranormal occurrences add an intangible layer of tension, visitors have reported hearing the soft murmur of conversations, as if patients from another time are speaking to one another. Others claim to hear coughing, sighs, or the distant clatter of medical tools being handled in empty rooms. These auditory phenomena are often accompanied by fleeting glimpses of figures in period attire, nurses gliding between beds, or patients sitting quietly in chairs that have been empty for decades. Even the common areas, the nurses' stations, waiting rooms, and administrative offices hold traces of life from another era. Doors open and close without reason, papers shift across desks, and chairs rock slightly on their own. Some visitors feel a presence brushing against their shoulders or hear whispers calling their names. The combination of cold drafts, shadowy figures, and unexplainable sounds creates an immersive experience of the hospital as a space where the past and present intersect, a place where the dead and living briefly share the same corridors. Outside the hospital, the grounds themselves seem alive with the echoes of history. Desert winds sweep through the empty courtyards, carrying faint sounds from within. Occasionally, figures have been seen moving past broken windows or standing along the roofline, their shapes indistinct but undeniably human. Footsteps crunch across the gravel, often approaching and retreating in a rhythm that mirrors the living visitor's own movements. Even the surrounding desert seems to amplify the sense of isolation and lingering presence, making the hospital feel both removed from the world and intimately connected to it through memory. Despite the unsettling reports, Black Rock County Hospital is not described as inherently malevolent. The activity is often seen as residual, a reflection of the lives that once inhabited the building. The patients, nurses, doctors, and grieving families who left their mark on every wall and floorboard. Many visitors describe their encounters as a mixture of fear and fascination, feeling a profound connection to the human stories embedded in the building. It is this intersection of history, tragedy, and lingering presence that draws people back, even as they leave with chills and a sense of awe. Mojave Desert Hospital in Pahrump, Nevada, is a sprawling structure that stands as a relic of medical ambition and human experimentation. Built during the mid-20th century, it was originally designed as a specialized facility to treat desert-related illnesses, respiratory conditions, severe dehydration, and heat stroke common among miners, travelers, and local residents. Its clinical reputation was ambitious, and in its heyday, doctors experimented with new treatments, often pushing the boundaries of medical science for the time. However, the hospital's promising beginnings eventually gave way to sudden closures, bureaucratic failures, and whispers of unusual occurrences. Today, it sits abandoned, a monolithic reminder of past hopes and a focal point for stories of paranormal activity. From the outside, Mojave Desert Hospital is imposing yet unassuming, a stark silhouette against a barren desert horizon. Its long wings stretch into the horizon, punctuated by narrow windows that now reflect only the scorching desert sun. Visitors approaching the building often remark on an immediate sense of stillness, as if the air itself holds its breath, carrying the weight of decades of unseen suffering. The surrounding desert amplifies the hospital's isolation, and the wind sometimes carries low, eerie moans, which many believe are echoes of the facility's turbulent past. Inside, the hospital retains the cold sterility of its former operations, with long hallways lined by empty patient rooms and abandoned medical equipment. Reports from visitors describe strange activity, particularly in areas that once housed experimental laboratories. Some claim to have seen lab instruments whirring, blinking, or even moving on their own, as though powered by invisible hands. Visitors have reported the sudden clatter of glassware, the hiss of old oxygen machines, and the low hum of equipment starting without electricity, a symphony of mechanical life where no living operator exists. These manifestations are often accompanied by fleeting glimpses of figures clad in hazmat suits, appearing in the periphery of hallways before vanishing when directly observed. The patient wards, once filled with the hum of ventilators and murmurs of illness, are particularly active according to eyewitness accounts. Shadows flicker along the walls, sometimes taking the shape of nurses or doctors from the hospital's operational era. Some visitors report the sensation of being watched, cold drafts brushing past their skin despite the desert heat outside, and the faint echo of voices murmuring medical instructions or patient names. In one corner of a ward, a visitor even describes seeing a figure kneeling beside a bed, adjusting sheets as though preparing a patient, only to disappear when approached. It is as though the hospital itself refuses to release its routines, continuing operations in a spectral loop long after the living staff departed. The experimental laboratories are perhaps the most unnerving. Rows of rusted cabinets and broken glass containment units still line the walls, and faint chemical smells linger in the air. Visitors have recounted seeing ghostly silhouettes moving between machines, sometimes bending over microscopes or adjusting dials. There are reports of sudden temperature drops, flickering lights, and instruments activating with no power source. The sounds of typing on ancient typewriters, the hum of centrifuges, and even the occasional echo of urgent footsteps seem to replay fragments of a past life, leaving visitors both fascinated and deeply unsettled. Even the hospital's operating rooms are said to be haunted by the echoes of old surgeries. Cold spots gather near abandoned surgical tables, and the sound of scissors snapping or trays clinking is occasionally heard in empty rooms. Some witnesses report seeing figures in surgical attire, moving with purpose, yet dissolving when approached. Others describe the sensation of invisible hands brushing against their arms or shoulders, a fleeting but chilling reminder of the lives that once depended on the hospital's care. The operating theaters, once a place of hope and anxiety, now seem suspended in a spectral limbo, retaining the tension and focus of decades past. The corridors of Mojave Desert Hospital are alive with similar phenomena. Visitors describe shadows that dart across hallways, lights that flicker in rhythmic patterns, and the faint sound of footsteps matching their own pace, though no one else is present. Doors to patient rooms swing open or shut without explanation, and the distant hiss of old air systems can mimic whispered conversations. Even stairwells have been reported to emit low, indecipherable murmurs, as if the building itself is attempting to communicate with intruders. Many who explore the hospital alone admit to a growing sense of unease, a feeling of being intruded upon by unseen occupants who once walked the same floors. Outside the building, the desert landscape seems to interact with the hospital's haunting presence. Winds sweep through the broken windows, carrying low, distant echoes that merge with the desert's natural sounds. Some have reported seeing shadowy figures through the windows, standing motionless before disappearing into the building. Others notice lights flickering within the hospital, even during the day, as if phantom staff continue their nightly rounds. The combination of isolation, heat, and spectral activity creates an atmosphere both alluring and terrifying, attracting paranormal investigators, curious tourists, and those drawn to the unknown. Despite its eerie reputation, Mojave Desert Hospital is not described as overtly malevolent. Visitors often interpret the phenomena as remnants of the hospital's history, ghosts of patients, nurses, and doctors replaying moments from a past steeped in illness, experimentation, and care. Many claim the spirits seem trapped by their routines, endlessly tending to phantom patients or walking deserted hallways. The building acts as a time capsule, preserving both the scientific ambitions and the human tragedies that unfolded within its walls, making the experience as educational as it is unnerving. ChatGPT said, Silver Canyon Rehabilitation Hospital in Ely, Nevada, is a haunting reminder of the toll taken on miners and laborers in the harsh desert environment. Built during the mid-20th century, the facility was designed to provide medical rehabilitation for those injured in mining accidents or industrial work, offering physical therapy, hydrotherapy, and specialized care for patients recovering from severe injuries. For decades, it served as a place of healing, where the sounds of splashing water, clinking weights, and steady footsteps echoed through its halls. Yet today, long after the hospital's closure, visitors report strange occurrences that suggest the spirits of past patients and staff still linger, replaying fragments of their lives in the empty corridors. The exterior of Silver Canyon Rehabilitation Hospital is imposing, a large structure of concrete and brick with long, narrow windows that once allowed sunlight to flood the therapy rooms. Desert winds sweep across the surrounding landscape, carrying a sense of isolation that is immediately felt by anyone approaching. The building seems frozen in time, a relic of medical ambition and human struggle. As night falls, the hospital takes on a more spectral character, its shadowy corners and empty wings stirring the imagination. Those brave enough to explore the abandoned facility describe an atmosphere thick with anticipation, as if the building itself is aware of its living visitors. Inside, the echo of a past life is palpable. The therapeutic pool, once a hub of patient rehabilitation, is often cited as a hotbed of paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing splashes echoing across the water, as if someone is swimming or performing exercises, though the pool has been drained for decades. On quieter nights, faint laughter and murmurs can be heard, accompanied by the soft creaking of wet tile floors. Some have even claimed to see shadowy figures standing at the pool's edge, as if instructing patients or encouraging them through unseen exercises. The water seems alive with memories, a silent witness to years of recovery and pain. The hospital's physical therapy rooms and equipment areas are similarly active. Wheelchairs have been observed moving on their own, sometimes rolling slowly across empty hallways or stopping abruptly near deserted treatment areas. Visitors have reported the clatter of crutches falling and weights rattling without explanation, the sound echoing through corridors devoid of life. Some claim to feel invisible hands brushing against their arms, guiding or steadying them as they navigate the labyrinth of hallways. The sensation is brief but chilling, leaving many to wonder if the spirits of former patients are still seeking to complete their exercises or relive their routines. The rehabilitation wards, once filled with the sounds of conversation, exercises, and medical care, now resonate with whispers and footsteps that cannot be accounted for. Shadowy figures are seen moving past windows and doorways, sometimes pausing to observe visitors before vanishing into the dimly lit corridors. Some witnesses report seeing figures in old hospital gowns, quietly performing the motions of therapy or tending to unseen patients. Others describe cold spots that appear suddenly, chilling the air in certain rooms or hallways, a sensation that seems to follow them as they walk. These experiences suggest that the hospital retains the echoes of its past, the energy of those who spent months or years healing within its walls. Even the offices and administrative areas have not escaped the paranormal. Desks appear as though still in use, with papers slightly askew and chairs turned as if recently vacated. Visitors have reported hearing the faint ringing of telephones, footsteps pacing along empty hallways, and doors opening and closing without explanation. The faint scent of antiseptic occasionally lingers, a reminder of the hospital's former function. Some paranormal investigators speculate that the spirits here are not malevolent, but rather trapped in a loop of habitual actions, continuing their daily routines long after their bodies have left. The hospital's isolation and desert surroundings amplify its eerie atmosphere. The sun sets quickly in the high desert, casting long shadows through broken windows and over abandoned equipment. Winds sweep through corridors, carrying the faint echoes of distant voices and the gentle creak of the building's structure settling. The silence is punctuated by sudden noises, a clanging wheelchair, the splash of water, or a whisper calling out a name, reminding visitors that Silver Canyon Rehabilitation Hospital is far from empty. Despite its haunted reputation, many who explore the hospital report a sense of reverence rather than fear. The spirits seem tied to the acts of care and recovery that once defined the facility. Some visitors interpret the phenomena as remnants of past dedication, the echoes of therapists guiding patients, or the lingering presence of workers determined to continue their routines. The hospital becomes a liminal space, where the line between past and present blurs. and visitors are granted a glimpse into a history both somber and strangely comforting. Today, Silver Canyon Rehabilitation Hospital remains abandoned, yet vividly alive through the reports of those who have walked its halls. The sounds of splashing water in the therapeutic pool, wheelchairs moving without occupants, and the soft rattle of equipment evoke the tireless work of those who once passed through its doors. Shadowy figures, whispers, and cold drafts remind visitors that this is a place where human perseverance left an imprint too strong to fade. The hospital's stories continue to draw those intrigued by the paranormal, history, and the lingering power of spaces devoted to care. Desert Bloom Women's Hospital in Las Vegas stands as a chilling relic of tragedy and sorrow. Its burned-out walls a silent testament to lives interrupted and stories left unfinished. Originally opened in the mid-20th century, the hospital specialized in women's health and maternity care, offering a safe space for mothers and infants in a rapidly growing city. Generations of families pass through its doors, hearing the laughter of nurses, the soft coos of newborns, and the steady rhythm of hospital life. But a devastating fire eventually brought the hospital's operations to an abrupt halt, leaving the building charred, abandoned, and steeped in the memories of those who never left. Today, Desert Bloom Women's Hospital is widely regarded as one of the most haunted locations in Las Vegas, drawing visitors curious about its paranormal legacy. The most notorious reports come from the maternity wing, where ghostly activity is said to be at its peak. Those who venture into this section of the hospital after dark frequently report hearing the faint, high-pitched cries of infants echoing through empty hallways. The cries are often described as heart-wrenching and persistent, fading only when visitors leave the wing. Some claim that the sound does not correspond to any particular room, as if the entire wing resonates with the collective sorrow and longing of babies who never fully survived the tragedy. Witnesses speak of a heavy emotional weight that seems to press against them, a lingering maternal grief that hangs in the air long after the fire reduced the hospital to a shell. Beyond the cries, visitors report seeing physical manifestations that defy explanation. Rocking chairs, once used by nurses and mothers, have been observed moving gently on their own, as if guided by invisible hands. Some chairs rock back and forth steadily, while others tilt slightly, only to resume an eerily hypnotic motion when ignored. Blankets and sheets are sometimes reported floating across the floor or folding themselves neatly on beds. A strange choreography that mirrors the routines of a hospital, still very much alive in spirit. These phenomena are unsettling precisely because they echo normal maternity wing activity, reminder of care and life, yet twisted by absence. Hallways and rooms in Desert Bloom Women's Hospital are imbued with a particular coldness, a sudden drop in temperature that has been reported by countless visitors. The chill is most pronounced near the maternity wing, where the floors are often slick with dust and debris. Some witnesses have described feeling unseen presences brush past them as they navigate the corridors, accompanied by fleeting shadows that disappear when turned toward. Footsteps echo unpredictably across long, empty hallways, punctuating the otherwise complete silence. And sometimes the faint scent of antiseptic lingers, a ghostly reminder of the hospital's former function. The former nurses' station, now blackened and warped from the fire, seems to attract frequent paranormal activity. Visitors describe the sensation of being watched, as though an unseen staff member is carefully observing their every movement. Occasionally, doors open and close of their own accord, drawers slide slightly, and old charts flutter across counters. Some say that the hospital's energy is not malevolent, but protective ghostly nurses and caretakers continuing to oversee the wing, maintaining routines long after death. Others report hearing whispers, soft instructions like hold him close or rest now, echoing from empty spaces. Even beyond the maternity wing, the hospital is active. The surgical suites, formerly sterile and bustling with activity, are now dark and ominous. Yet visitors report glimpses of shadowy figures in scrubs moving about as though preparing for procedures. Faint metallic clanging and the hiss of non-existent oxygen lines have been heard by those exploring the building's depths. Occasionally, the fire's aftermath manifests as a spectral glow, highlighting charred walls and burned ceilings in a way that appears deliberate, as though the spirits are reliving the day of catastrophe in fragments. Some paranormal investigators have attempted to document activity in the hospital, placing cameras and audio recorders in areas with the highest reported occurrences. Captured footage sometimes reveals unexplained movement, shadowy silhouettes crossing hallways, and objects slightly displaced from their original positions. Audio recordings occasionally pick up faint crying, whispering voices, and the soft, rhythmic creak of rocking chairs, even when the building is empty. These experiences suggest that the hospital remains an active site of residual energy, preserving moments of care, grief, and tragedy in a haunting loop. Despite its tragic history, Desert Bloom Women's Hospital holds a morbid fascination for those drawn to haunted locations. The building's isolation in the Las Vegas desert amplifies its eerie atmosphere, with the setting sun casting long shadows through broken windows and burned-out sections. Desert winds sweep across the structure, carrying with them the faint echoes of past lives. The abandoned hospital is a liminal space where past and present collide, where the laughter, cries, and footsteps of former patients and staff seem to linger in the silence. Visitors often describe a mix of fear and awe upon leaving Desert Bloom. The cries of infants, the rocking chairs, and the drifting blankets leave an indelible impression, a reminder that life and loss coexist in spaces once devoted to care. Some leave feeling a connection to the people who pass through the hospital, a sense that the spirits continue to guide and protect, even in the aftermath of fire and abandonment. Others depart with a chilling realization that the past is not easily contained, and that the echoes of suffering and dedication remain imprinted upon the building. Nevada Frontier Hospital in Ely stands as a stark monument to the city's mining past, a place where life, death, and tragedy intertwined daily. Constructed during the height of the mining boom, the hospital's brick and stone facade once symbolized hope for injured miners, prospectors, and their families. For decades, it was a bustling facility, with nurses rushing through corridors, doctors tending to the critically injured, and the constant hum of activity that accompanied a community living on the edge of danger. Accidents in the mines were frequent, and the hospital's trauma rooms often filled with the wounded, while the sounds of ambulance, sirens, and rushing footsteps were never far away. Though the hospital has long been abandoned, visitors today report a chilling continuation of its past, a place where the echoes of emergency care linger in spectral form. The most common experiences reported by those exploring the decaying hospital are auditory. Phantom ambulance sirens are said to wail through the empty corridors, often accompanied by the squeak of gurney wheels and the hurried steps of unseen nurses. The sounds are remarkably vivid, as if an entire emergency response team is operating unseen. Visitors recount the sensation of being part of a scene frozen in time, the tense, urgent energy of a trauma ward that persists decades after the hospital was vacated. Some have even reported hearing the faint murmur of medical staff calling out instructions to one another, voices overlapping in a haunting chorus of care and urgency that never fades. The trauma rooms themselves seem to be at the center of Nevada Frontier Hospital's haunting. Explorers describe fleeting shadows moving across these rooms, vanishing when approached, yet leaving a tangible sense of presence. Occasionally, the faint scent of antiseptic or burnt oxygen masks lingers in the air, triggering the unsettling impression that the hospital is still in operation. Equipment long removed or destroyed is sometimes felt, rather than seen. Visitors speak of an invisible pressure, as if someone is adjusting beds, moving supplies, or checking vital signs. The sensation is almost overwhelming to those sensitive to energy, a constant reminder of the hospital's history of emergency care and human suffering. Visitors often experience sudden drops in temperature, particularly near the trauma and surgical areas. Cold drafts sweep through hallways with no apparent source, causing chills to run down the spine even on hot desert days. Some claim that the drafts are accompanied by tactile sensations, like fingers brushing across shoulders or hands briefly gripping their arms, as if the hospital's unseen inhabitants are acknowledging their presence. These encounters are never threatening. Rather, they convey a sense of unfinished business, as if the spirits are still dedicated to their roles. Watching over the building's empty corridors, the surgical wings, though long since stripped of their equipment, carry some of the hospital's most unnerving phenomena. Visitors report hearing the faint hiss of oxygen tanks, the clatter of surgical tools, and even whispers of instructions in hushed tones. Some witnesses describe shadowy figures moving along the walls or appearing at the end of a hall, dressed in period medical attire, only to vanish when approached. These apparitions are often accompanied by a sense of purpose, as if the hospital's former staff are replaying their duties in a ghostly loop. Others describe seeing floating lights that resemble lanterns once used by nurses to navigate in emergencies, drifting slowly through the darkness with an almost deliberate rhythm. Nevada Frontier Hospital's morgue also attracts paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing drawers open and close by themselves, muffled groans emanating from behind locked doors, and faint footsteps echoing on concrete floors. Cold spots clustered near the morgue entrance, and some claim to feel a presence standing silently in the corner, observing without movement. The energy here is heavy, suffused with the lingering awareness of lives lost to mining accidents, diseases, and injuries. Some paranormal investigators speculate that the intense suffering endured here has left a permanent imprint on the building, preserving moments of fear, care, and finality. Hallways outside the trauma and surgical areas are similarly active. Footsteps echo when no one is present, and shadows pass across walls, often timed with the rhythm of the phantom gurney wheels or the imagined cadence of hurried staff. Doors that were once used to isolate infectious patients sometimes creak open on their own, revealing empty rooms, while electrical systems, long disconnected, occasionally flicker inexplicably, illuminating long-abandoned spaces with brief, ghostly light. Some visitors have even described hearing distant conversations, faintly discussing patient care or surgical procedures, voices that dissolve into silence as quickly as they arrive. Despite the intense spectral activity, many who explore Nevada Frontier Hospital describe the experiences as oddly reverent. The spirits of the hospital's past inhabitants do not appear malicious. Instead, they convey a sense of duty and dedication. Patients, nurses, and doctors seem to linger in the corridors, repeating their roles in the service of others. Some paranormal enthusiasts interpret this as residual energy, replaying the hospital's history of urgency and care. Others sense conscious entities, aware of their surroundings, ensuring the building maintains the memory of its former purpose. The desolate exterior of the hospital, with broken windows and crumbling brickwork, amplifies the eerie atmosphere. Desert winds howl across the structure, carrying fragments of whispered voices and the occasional echo of footsteps. The long shadows cast by the setting sun stretch across the abandoned facade, creating the illusion of movement where there is none. At night, the building seems almost alive, resonating with the countless stories of pain, healing, and human perseverance contained within its walls. Silver Sands Tuberculosis Hospital, perched in the remote desert near Searchlight, Nevada, is a stark reminder of a time when tuberculosis was a feared and pervasive disease. Built in the early 20th century to treat miners, railroad workers, and desert laborers, the hospital was intentionally isolated from the surrounding communities to contain the highly contagious illness. Its whitewashed buildings, long verandas, and sun-bleached walls once symbolized hope for patients fighting a deadly disease. But now they stand abandoned, weathered by decades of wind, sand, and neglect. Despite its desolation, the hospital has not been left entirely to silence. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts report that Silver Sands continues to echo with the presence of its former patients and staff, as if the building itself is unable to let go of its past. Approaching the hospital at twilight, the first thing many notice is the strange quality of the light. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the cracked sidewalks and empty courtyards, and the buildings appear to shift subtly in the fading glow, as if holding secrets just beyond perception. Windows that were once filled with sunlight now reflect the dim desert sky. And inside, The halls seem to extend into endless darkness. Some visitors have described glimpsing white figures gliding past these windows, fleeting silhouettes that vanish if looked at directly. The figures are ethereal, dressed in period clothing or simple gowns, moving with a deliberate, almost solemn grace. These apparitions are often accompanied by the faint sound of coughing, carried along corridors where no one has set foot in decades. Inside, the hospital's main corridors are unsettlingly quiet, yet full of unseen activity. The tiled floors, scuffed and dusty, sometimes creak under invisible footsteps. Shadows shift at the periphery of vision, and the faint scent of antiseptic lingers as though it never truly left. Visitors often report feeling sudden chills, especially near the former patient wards. These cold spots seem to pulse, moving along hallways, following anyone brave enough to explore deeper into the hospital. Some speculate that the chill represents the lingering illness that once pervaded the building, a spectral echo of suffering that refuses to dissipate. The patient rooms are the heart of Silver Sands haunting. Each room, long stripped of beds and equipment, retains a heavy, almost oppressive atmosphere. Shadows are frequently reported moving across walls and floors, sometimes coalescing into vague human forms. Witnesses describe hearing coughing, the rattle of beds, and the soft shuffle of shoes on the worn tile. It is as if the patients, many of whom died in isolation due to the severity of their illness, continue to inhabit the rooms they never truly left. Some claim to have seen figures of patients sitting on non-existent beds, heads bowed in exhaustion, or slowly pacing the narrow spaces, their presence simultaneously sorrowful and faintly welcoming. The nurses and staff, too, are said to linger in spectral form. Visitors often report seeing shadowy women in white uniforms walking along hallways that no longer exist, as though navigating corridors that time has erased. Their movements are purposeful, attentive, almost maternal, suggesting a care that transcends the boundaries between life and death. Occasionally, these figures are accompanied by faint whispers, fragments of instructions or reassurances meant for patients who are no longer present. Some witnesses have felt a presence standing just behind them, warm and watchful, only to turn and see nothing. It is a haunting reminder that the caretakers of Silver Sands may have stayed behind, committed to their duties even after the hospital was shuttered. The treatment areas, the sunrooms, and therapy halls have their own spectral activity. Visitors often speak of hearing the soft scrape of chairs being moved, the low murmur of voices, and the occasional faint laughter of children, even though the hospital was primarily for adults. The sounds are fleeting and elusive, vanishing as soon as they are fully noticed. Some report seeing lantern-like lights drifting slowly across empty halls, reminiscent of the old lamps nurses would carry during evening rounds. These lights sometimes coalesce into vague human shapes, moving with deliberate care and vanishing when approached. Outside, the desert seems to amplify the hospital's strange energy. The wind carries whispers across empty courtyards, and the shadows of the building stretch unnaturally in the moonlight. Some visitors claim to hear coughing and footsteps from beyond the hospital walls, as though the spirits have spilled out into the open desert. Others report feeling a presence at the edge of the property, watching silently from the sand, a spectral reminder of those who succumbed to the disease in solitude. Even the hospital cemetery, a small plot used for patients who passed away without family nearby, has its own reports of hauntings. Witnesses describe fleeting figures moving among the headstones and the faint sound of prayers, sometimes in a language long forgotten. Some claim that the spirits here are not malevolent. Rather, they are guardians of the hospital, lingering to protect the memories of those who suffered and died within its walls. Explorers and paranormal investigators who have ventured into Silver Sands frequently speak of the overwhelming feeling that the hospital is alive in some sense, resonating with the pain, care, and struggle that once filled its halls. The coughing echoes, drifting lights, and shadowy figures all create a palpable link to the past. It is as if Silver Sands Tuberculosis Hospital refuses to be forgotten, preserving the experiences of its patients and staff in spectral form. forever suspended between history and the present. Desert Horizon Psychiatric Center, located on the outskirts of Ely, Nevada, is a sprawling facility that once cared for long-term psychiatric patients from across the state. Established in the mid-20th century, it was designed to provide specialized care for those suffering from severe mental health conditions at a time when resources were scarce and understanding was limited. Its stark, utilitarian architecture, long corridors, and isolated location gave it an air of solemnity, but over the decades, the building became the site of untold suffering and untended despair. Though the center has been closed for years, those who venture onto its grounds report that the spirits of its former patients and staff have not entirely departed. The first impression visitors often get is the overwhelming stillness that hangs over the facility. The desert wind whistles through broken windows, stirring dust along long abandoned hallways. But it cannot carry away the feeling that the building itself remembers every anguished scream, every whispered plea, every moment of isolation endured within its walls. Entering the main corridors, one is immediately aware of the peculiar atmosphere. Shadows seem to shift at the edge of vision, and the air can grow inexplicably cold. Many who have explored Desert Horizon claim to feel sudden chills, even in the heat of the desert sun, as if unseen presences brush past them, invisible but unmistakably there. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the movement of wheelchairs. Visitors recount seeing empty wheelchairs slowly roll across hallways, sometimes stopping abruptly at the end of a corridor, or turning on their own, as though guided by invisible hands. Some staff members who once worked in the facility, now long retired, have spoken of hearing these movements even when the building was officially empty, attributing it to restless spirits who continue to navigate the spaces they once occupied. The wheelchair's silent, autonomous motion leaves a chilling impression, a reminder that the center's occupants may never have fully left. The patient rooms themselves are particularly active, formerly bright and sterile. Now they are shrouded in dust and shadow, yet reports from visitors suggest they are far from empty. Cold spots frequently occur near beds or in corners, sometimes following individuals as they move through the room. Whispered voices are often heard, asking for help, fragments of conversation, or soft pleas that fade when approached. These auditory phenomena are reported with startling consistency, suggesting that the residual energy of patients who spent long periods confined to these rooms continues to echo in the present. Some visitors describe the sensation of being watched, as though unseen eyes are tracking their movements, heightening the unnerving ambience of the space. The treatment areas, including therapy rooms and common spaces, are similarly haunted. Faint noises of chairs scraping against floors, the distant echo of footsteps, and even laughter or crying have been reported, often in patterns that mimic past activity. Investigators and thrill seekers alike have remarked that these sounds rarely follow logic. They appear and disappear without explanation, sometimes repeating in the exact order one might have expected during a typical day at the center. This repetition of past events gives the sense that the spirits of Desert Horizon are replaying fragments of their lives, forever caught in the routines and dramas that once defined their days. Staff areas, particularly offices once occupied by nurses and attendants, carry their own strange signatures. Many visitors report hearing the soft shuffle of shoes on linoleum, whispers of instructions, and the faint sound of doors opening and closing when no one is present. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed standing at the end of hallways or appearing from doorways, indistinct but undeniably human in form. These apparitions often appear to be performing familiar tasks, like checking charts or walking the rounds, suggesting that the dedication of former staff members lingers, anchored to the spaces where they cared for patients. Even the exterior of Desert Horizon contributes to its reputation. Desert wind amplifies faint sounds, carrying whispers across the grounds, and the long, empty walkways between buildings create a sense of isolation and vulnerability. Some visitors report seeing shadowy forms moving just beyond the windows or along the perimeters, vanishing when approached. Lights, too, are said to flicker inexplicably, casting elongated shadows and giving the impression of movement where none should exist. These phenomena reinforce the idea that the spirits of Desert Horizon are not confined to interior spaces. They inhabit the facility as a whole, bound by memories of confinement and care. The center's dark history adds weight to these experiences. Many patients were admitted for conditions that were poorly understood at the time, and some remained in the hospital for years, never returning home. Others passed away within its walls, often alone, and were buried without ceremony in unmarked graves or in nearby cemeteries. This combination of prolonged confinement, suffering, and untended death has contributed to the persistent feeling that the center itself holds these lives in its memory. Visitors often report a sense of sorrow and unease that is palpable, as though the building mourns alongside those who remain. Paranormal investigators have documented a variety of phenomena. Thermal imaging sometimes shows unexplained cold areas moving along hallways. Audio recordings pick up whispers and murmurs in rooms where no one is present. And motion detectors are occasionally triggered by nothing visible. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to imagination or the natural effects of an abandoned building, the consistency and specificity of reports suggest that Desert Horizon's spirits maintain a presence that defies ordinary explanation. Oasis Springs Leprosarium Wing in Las Vegas is a relic of a painful past, a quarantined section of a former hospital that once treated patients suffering from leprosy. Though the wing has been sealed off for decades, the building's history refuses to stay buried. Visitors to the grounds report a sense of oppressive heaviness the moment they approach, as if the air itself is thick with the memories of suffering and isolation that once defined this place. Even on dry desert nights, there is a tangible weight that presses against the chest, an unshakable feeling that unseen eyes are watching every step. The wing was originally designed to isolate patients, a necessary but harsh measure during a time when leprosy was poorly understood and fear of contagion ran high. Patients spent weeks, months, and sometimes years confined within its walls, often separated from family and friends. The architecture itself reflects that history: long corridors, small barred windows, and doors that seem more like gates than entrances. Today, the wing stands abandoned, doors tightly sealed. Yet those who dare to linger around its perimeter often report inexplicable phenomena that suggest the spirits of its former occupants remain. Perhaps the most common report is the humming. Visitors describe a low, mournful sound that seems to emanate from the very walls, a vibration that seeps into the bones and is impossible to pinpoint. Some say it resembles the sound of a chant or a prayer. Others compare it to the quiet murmur of dozens of voices speaking at once. Paranormal investigators who have entered nearby areas report that the hum fluctuates in pitch and intensity, rising when someone approaches a certain window or door. Those who linger too long often experience headaches, nausea, or a sense of vertigo, as though the building itself resents intrusion. Doors in the leprosarium wing seem to have a life of their own. Witnesses report doors swinging open suddenly, even when locked from the inside. Some say the hinges creak in slow, deliberate rhythm, almost as if invisible hands are testing the boundaries between inside and outside. Late-night visitors have seen doors suddenly ajar, catching the moonlight and revealing shadows shifting beyond, though no one can be found on the other side. These movements are accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, a biting cold that seems out of place in the desert night, sending shivers down the spine. Windows offer another window into the paranormal. Visitors claim to glimpse figures moving behind panes that should be completely dark. Some describe blurred silhouettes of people in tattered hospital gowns, walking or standing still, as if trapped in a moment from the past. Others report seeing faces pressed against the glass, only to vanish when approached. These fleeting glimpses leave a lasting impression, an uncanny sense that the wing is alive with observation. Locals warn that the figures are not simply echoes, but perhaps lingering spirits, unable or unwilling to leave the place that defined their final years. The oppressive feeling is more than just atmospheric. Many describe a heaviness that drags at the limbs, as though invisible pressure is pushing down on the body. Some visitors report a sudden, inexplicable fatigue upon stepping near the building, followed by a sensation of being watched from every direction. Others recount hearing footsteps echoing from within, slow and deliberate, as if someone is pacing the halls long after the wing has been sealed. The sounds are often accompanied by whispers that are impossible to understand, yet unmistakably human in cadence, like murmured fragments of conversation or a long-forgotten prayer. The wing's history provides context to these eerie experiences. Patients were often isolated for their own safety and that of the community, but the isolation came at a cost. Loneliness, fear, and suffering permeated every corner. Many died without seeing family, their presence lingering in the very walls that held them captive. Today, the building is a stark reminder of that suffering, and many believe the emotional residue is why the wing is so active with paranormal activity. The spirits are said to replay fragments of their lives, repeating gestures, sounds, and movements that were once part of daily survival in a place of illness and quarantine. Investigators who have dared to explore the periphery of the leprosarium wing note that even equipment often behaves strangely. Thermal cameras show bursts of cold energy along empty corridors. Motion sensors detect movement where there should be none, and audio recorders pick up low-frequency humming or whispers in languages no longer spoken in the area. These phenomena are often reported in the same locations repeatedly, suggesting a pattern, as if certain areas of the wing retain more energy than others. The effect can be unnerving. One moment, the wing feels entirely abandoned. The next, it pulses with a presence that is both watchful and sorrowful. Even outside the wing, the atmosphere carries a warning. Desert nights are silent, yet when the wind shifts, visitors report hearing muffled voices, footsteps crunching on gravel, and fleeting glimpses of motion in the perimeter shadows. Those who approach too closely sometimes experience a cold draft that cuts through heavy jackets and coats, a sensation that cannot be explained by the desert air. The land itself seems to remember the wing's past, amplifying the experiences of anyone who steps too near. Silver Summit Veterans Sanatorium in Ely sits quietly atop a barren hill, its mid-century brick facade weathered by decades of desert winds. Once a hospital dedicated to treating veterans suffering from chronic chemical exposure, the facility is now abandoned. Yet the stories of those who enter suggest that the spirits of its past residents remain very much present. Visitors report an unsettling energy from the moment they approach, as though the building itself is alert, aware of intruders in its empty halls. The sanatorium served veterans from conflicts spanning several decades, many of whom were exposed to harmful substances during service. Treatments were rudimentary by today's standards, and many patients spent years in long-term care, confined to their rooms or assigned to solitary wings. The corridors, once filled with medical personnel and patients, now lie in shadowed silence, but the echoes of the past are palpable. Guests and paranormal investigators alike describe a sense of being watched, an invisible presence moving just beyond the edge of vision. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of a sentinel figure, a ghostly man in a faded military uniform. Witnesses describe him patrolling the corridors, walking with deliberate precision, eyes fixed straight ahead, as though carrying out duties that never ended. Some say the figure disappears when approached, only to reappear further down the hall, or in another wing, maintaining his silent watch. The uniformed apparition gives the unmistakable impression of a disciplined soldier, a guardian lingering long after the sanatorium has closed. Footsteps are another frequently reported phenomenon. Visitors hear the slow, steady tread of boots along corridors that are otherwise deserted. The sounds echo off walls and tile floors, following those exploring the halls without warning. Sometimes, the footsteps appear to approach from behind, stopping abruptly when the observer turns, leaving a chilling emptiness. Others hear the shuffle of feet along stairwells or across empty wards, and at times, the sound is accompanied by the faint clink of metal, as if dog tags or buttons are striking the floor. Even the most skeptical find it hard to ignore these unexplainable noises. Empty beds in former patient rooms seem to host their own inexplicable activity. Several accounts describe uniform jackets materializing on these unoccupied beds, as though an invisible soldier has briefly returned to rest. The jackets sometimes appear folded neatly, other times draped haphazardly, but always vanish within moments of being noticed. Some visitors have claimed that the jackets move slightly, as if caught by a draft, but there is never any wind inside the sealed rooms. Paranormal investigators have captured thermal anomalies in these areas, suggesting that a residual presence lingers where the jackets appear. The atmosphere throughout the sanatorium is described as heavy and suffocating. Cold spots form unexpectedly along hallways, chilling the skin despite the desert heat outside. Many visitors report a sensation of pressure on the chest, a subtle but persistent weight that intensifies when standing still for too long. Some even feel the presence of unseen hands brushing against their shoulders or trailing along their arms. This oppressive energy seems to increase in areas where patient rooms are clustered together, as if the memories and pain of those who once lived there have been absorbed into the walls and floors. Windows in the old facility provide glimpses into the paranormal as well. Observers have reported shadowy figures moving past the glass at night, sometimes pausing to look inside. These shapes are often indistinct, but they evoke the unmistakable form of a person in uniform or hospital attire. Occasionally, faint lights flicker in rooms where electricity has long since been disconnected, illuminating objects and corners for a brief moment before fading again, as if the building itself is trying to reveal a hidden history. The sanatorium's legacy of chemical exposure and long-term care contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Many veterans suffered prolonged illness, and some died on site, their final moments filled with isolation and discomfort. The enduring presence of their spirits seems tied to this unfinished chapter in the building's history. Locals often warn against exploring the facility after dark, noting that even experienced ghost hunters report heightened anxiety, disorientation, and an eerie sense of being followed along empty corridors. Equipment left behind in the building adds to the spectral landscape. Wheelchairs occasionally appear out of place, moved from one room to another without explanation. Hospital trays, once used to deliver food, have been reported sliding across floors on their own. Monitors and medical machines, long disconnected from power, emit faint beeps or flashes of light, startling anyone nearby. These occurrences, while subtle, create a sense that the sanatorium is not entirely abandoned, and that its inhabitants are engaged in a routine that transcends death. Even outside the main building, the presence is felt. Desert nights amplify the isolation, and visitors walking the perimeter report hearing footsteps on gravel or distant calls that mimic the cadence of a military march. The wind sometimes carries voices that seem to whisper names, fragments of conversation, or brief commands. Those who pause often feel a sudden chill, as if the sentinel figure has passed by, continuing his patrol along the perimeter as he did in life. There, you have it. 25 haunted hospitals in Nevada, where the past refuses to stay silent, and the patients still roam the empty corridors. Some are real, some are drawn from whispered legend, but all carry the same chilling truth. Hospitals are places of life and death, hope and despair, where spirits can linger long after the world has moved on. If tonight's journey sent a shiver down your spine, remember to subscribe, hit the bell, and explore more haunted corners with us. Nevada's deserts, towns, and abandoned hospitals are waiting silent, dark, and alive in ways most never see. Keep your light strong, your ears open to the whispers, and your heart ready for the shadows, because somewhere, just beyond the flicker of your flashlight, the patients still roam. Stay brave, stay curious, and good night.